Not Quite Right features discussions that are unfiltered and uncensored and may include themes that are inappropriate for younger listeners. Also, I swear a lot.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
Welcome to Not Quite Right. My name's Ed.
And I'm Amanda.
Now, Amanda, if you'll allow me to break one of the rules of writing here, I would like to name an emotion.
Go on.
I'm excited.
I could tell that took a lot for you to say, so well done.
It took a lot. I'm very excited because this is our Longlist episode.
I know.
For the October round of the Not Quite Right prize.
And it always feels like it takes so long to get to this point.
It does.
And it is a bit of a torturous wait. So I'm excited too.
And I know we do have a lot of new entrants this round, and some of them have come from your flash fiction workshops that you've been running.
Yeah, so welcome to those of you who joined me in the meet space, if you will, at Erina Library. And there's quite a few, I think, from that group and from other previous groups as well who are joining us. So thank you. I'm excited to have you here.
So if you are new here, it's time to get settled in because we have, as always, a massive episode. We'll be discussing all the stats from the October round. We'll be sharing our favourite responses to all 3 prompts, plus calling out our favourite titles, favourite quotes. And we'll hear from our guest judge, Dino, who I'm sure will call out several of his favourites as well. Plus, we'll be responding to listener questions, including your voicemails. And then right at the end of the episode, what everyone has been waiting for, we will be reading out the titles and the authors of the long-listed stories. The episode is time-stamped, so if you're impatient, you can skip ahead. But if you do, we hope you'll come back and listen to the rest of the episode because you might be getting a shout-out.
Yeah, for sure.
And just a reminder that if you do hear your name being called out as a favourite title, favourite line, favourite prompt response, whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that you made the long list. We will read out the long list right at the end of the episode.
Yeah, because it's not all about the long list, right?
No.
Like, you've got to celebrate the little wins along the way as well.
Absolutely. And so just to look ahead a little bit, in about a week's time from now, we'll be dropping the shortlist episode for the October round, where we not only announce the shortlist and our wildcard winners and, of course, the winner of the October round, but we also will be reading all of the shortlisted stories in full.
And there's some great ones this round. I'm very excited to hear those.
There absolutely are. It's my favourite episode each round, and this round is no exception. There'll be some wonderful stories to read. And then after the shortlist, the October round is not over because we'll be releasing our Daredevil episodes, where our very brave Daredevils have signed up on purpose, if you can believe it, to have their October round entry read out and critiqued on the podcast.
I actually can't believe it. Like, every time. Every time I'm like, are you sure?
It's a harrowing experience for everyone involved. But if you are a Daredevil and you're listening to this, now's the time to jump on Amazon and place your order for a couple of bottles of wine and a big old tub of lube. Because you're going to need it.
Do you care to explain that?
Because we'll be going in hard.
Oh, jeez.
And on that topic, the innuendo jar is locked and loaded and in front of us.
I think you owe. I mean, that wasn't even an innuendo. That was just flat out like aggressive behaviour.
So we put $1 in the innuendo jar for every innuendo or inappropriate joke. We've got about $70 in there now.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Which is pretty wild. But also, I think we can do better.
I think we can
aim for 100. Maybe by the end of this episode. Go harder. Lube up. Let's go. All right, but let's get into the October round. And our prompts this round were the word boot, the action of kissing goodbye, and the anti-prompt, break the rule, show, don't tell. Now, the more astute among you will have noticed that there's a little implied message there in this round's prompt.
Very subtle one.
A very subtle one, and that is that we're giving the anti-prompt the boot. We're kissing it goodbye, and we're
showing it the door.
We're showing it the door.
And then we're telling it to get fucked.
So what we're replacing it with in 2026 is the write-off, which is a format we're both really excited about. We won't get into all of that here because we've released a whole separate episode talking about that format, explaining how it's going to work. And it's the episode titled It's a Write-Off that is right before this one on the podcast feed. So have a listen to that to find out what's coming next year. But just to mention that because of those changes next year, the format of these long list episodes is also going to be changing next year. Otherwise, it will become like 4 to 6 hours long. So we're going to take the opportunity to trim a little bit and to streamline that format.
Yeah, and I guess just to focus on the things that people most want to hear and most want to find out after they've finished a comp.
All right, well, with that all being said, let's get into the October round stats. We had 344 entries this round from 16 countries, and that's with half entrants telling us where they're from. So there could have been more countries, but we don't know if you don't tell us. And those countries were Australia, the United States, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Denmark, Japan, Ireland, Slovenia, Sweden, Switzerland. Shout out to last round winner, Elder. Finland, Malaysia, Spain, Germany, and one from South Africa. So hello to Caro Robson. We'll be playing your voicemail message a little bit later.
I went to Tokyo Disney not that long ago, so it's just like our own little It's a Small World situation.
Absolutely. So a few more stats. As always, 2/3 of our entrants were women, which is pretty consistent with past rounds. Our oldest entrant was 85 years old.
Oh, hi.
And our youngest was 15, hopefully entering with their parents' permission. That's a 70-year age gap between our oldest and our youngest.
That's cool.
The average age was 42, which is how old you are.
Yes,
Amanda.
thank you for reminding me.
And basically you are our average entrant, 42-year-old woman from Australia.
There's nothing average about me, but thank you. Shout out to all the other 42-year-old Australian women.
I'm sure there are a few. So the total number of words we read this round was 164,924, which is roughly equivalent to The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Have you read that?
I haven't. And can I ask a really dumb question?
Is it wrath or wrath? Is that your question?
No,
Okay.
dumber.
All right, go on.
Is it about grapes? Are there grapes in it? Or is that a metaphor or what? What is the grapes?
It's set in California, right? It's like in the west of the US, so it's probably grapes. There's grapes there.
There's grapes?
But it's not real. It's about the Depression more than grapes.
Yeah. Okay.
And of mice and men. Is that about actual mice?
It's a valid question. Why? If you never read it, why you wouldn't know that?
And Moby Dick. So for disqualifications this round, we tend to get a few each round. This round we only had one official, no grey area disqualification. One story didn't use the word boot, which is very unfortunate. Obviously, we can't consider your story if you miss out on the word. Like the other two prompts are open to interpretation a little bit more, but if the word boot doesn't appear in your story, then it's out of the running. There are a few borderline. We didn't officially disqualify, let's say, but didn't make it through to the long list. But I guess we wanted to issue a warning because some people still are putting their names or references to themselves in the brief explanation field. And on one instance, at least, there were enough clues in the story submitted that we knew who the author was. So
and knew with certainty, who the author was. Yeah.
So please try and avoid both of those things. We do judge blind, and if we know who the story is by, it's going to affect our judging, and we disqualify it for that reason. So this round was a little bit borderline, let's say, but I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, we don't like to disqualify people, so we're in no rush to do it,
Yeah.
but we do have to consider what's fair to others as well. And it's different, I suppose, if someone leaves their name in there and we don't know that person and it's sort of irrelevant information to us and it makes no difference to our judging, and we can maybe be a little bit more flexible. But if it is someone we know, then we would feel really uncomfortable progressing their story with that information because it's no longer blind. And I think sometimes some people self-identify on purpose and they have no desire to win. They just want to have some fun, and that's fine as long as you're doing that with, the knowledge of the consequences, basically.
And our final stat is shortest entry this time around was only 180 words, and that was That Thong, the Thong, Thong, Thong by Ali Terry, which was certainly a standout title as well.
You might call it a skimpy story, right?
Yes, didn't leave much to the imagination. So we had a guest judge this round. Dean returned.
He's back.
To help us out.
Assistant judge, I think.
Oh, he's been promoted, hasn't he?
No, demoted.
He's no longer a guest.
He's outstayed his welcome.
So let's give Dean a call and see what he thought about this round.
Sounds good.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
It's great to be back for this final round of the anti-prompt. What a round it was. Actually, I've got to say that it went out swinging, that anti-prompt. We had some really fun stories that really gave it a good send-off, I feel like. Well, let's get to that in a second. Let's go sort of in order because we had Boot. You guys put out a booty call. And, well, we actually only had a couple of booty calls, to be honest.
Yeah, surprisingly not more.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have
Knowing
seen a few
our
more.
interests.
Yeah. Unsurprisingly, when you asked people for a boot, they gave us a lot of footwear. Who would have thought over 80% of the stories used some kind of boot? However, the actual types of boots were, everything from little booties that you knit for a baby to cowboy boots, and you got rain boots. You had clown boots, I think we had. There were lots of different types of boots. We even had a particular story that called out the golden gumboot statue in Tully. So that's technically is more of a statue than a boot, but hey, that sort of stands alone. So yes, footwear absolutely won the day as far as boots go.
I put out a poll, Dean, on Twitter and Blue Sky just to see what people thought was the second most popular after footwear. So I'll tell you what people voted, and then you can tell us the actual winner. So the choices were booth, reboot, car boot, as in the trunk of a car, and booty. So 52% of people thought that booth would be the second place. 18% thought, perhaps optimistically, that booty would be coming in second, bringing up the rear, if you will.
I just wanted to hear you guys read them out.
And then 16% thought reboot and 14% thought car boot. So overwhelmingly, most people thought booth would come second. And that was my vote too. So tell us. What was second place?
Yeah, well, you'd think so, but this is a very big surprise. It was very close because they both ended up with 7% each, but reboot actually was the second most. We had rebooting, we had boot, or also included like when you boot up something, that's often how they used the word boot, but it was in the context of rebooting because we had, I guess there was a few sort of computer sort of sci-fi robot-y kind of things, but often it was used sort of just to reboot someone's life or to reboot the franchise. But that actually just edged out. We're talking about one or two stories because some stories have a couple, like often they'd also have a footwear or they might also have a booth. But that actually was second, which was very surprising. But booth was absolutely third.
When you talk about reboot as well, like I did notice there were a lot of stories about robots and stuff and like AI and the influence of technology and the interplay between humans and technology. So I guess that reboot word inspired a lot of this tech sort of stuff as well.
That seems to be, I think one particular story was just an entirely just sort of a robot kind of language just playing out. So we had a lot of those. And the car boot, and maybe because a lot of Americans, I think, just don't call it a boot, maybe we would have had more if it was a universal term for the back of a car. Another one which was sort of up there, wasn't on the podium, but it's using boot, but it was more like the verb to give someone the boot or to, to stick the boot in. So they weren't using it as footwear, as more just sort of the phrasing around getting rid of someone. And we also had bootleg. So, to bootleg items or bootleggers, as in the people, bootlickers. Oh, yeah. So we had a few. And then we had Bootylicious, and there were a couple of names. So we had Boothroyd, I think was one, a surname. We also had Boots the Cat. So that was another one. And just one, the movie Das Boot.
Yes, I remember that one.
Yes, that popped up as the only time in the story they used boot was to say that movie name. And there was another one which used boot a couple of times in the story, but one of the ones was a small child saying, I think you're beautiful. Spelled out. It was very, was complete with the misspelling of I think you're, or whatever it was. But so we had a lot of creativity around that, but there's no getting around the fact that, footwear definitely ruled the day there.
All right, so what about the action prompt, which was kissing goodbye?
Now, this one was probably less imaginative in terms of who we were kissing goodbye because it was just, it was people, your partner, your children, your loved ones, family members. But then we also had some more creative things like, you can kiss this job goodbye if you don't turn up to work, or an opportunity, or kiss the money goodbye, in a sort of a heist story. Or we also had, sort of bigger stakes like you can kiss your life goodbye or kiss the planet goodbye, which I had flagged flashbacks to the kill your darlings round when everyone wanted to destroy the world.
Yeah.
But one that I do want to call out specifically for this was a story by Josh Lowe, actually. It's called Tell Me What the World Looks Like. This also kind of played into the anti-prompt because it had a blind character. So tell me all the things you see. And this particular story was describing colours, and they described the colour blue, and this is to quote, as kissing someone goodbye, but being grateful for ever having them. So I thought that was how they described the colour blue. So that was a nice way to kind of merge, I guess, the anti-prompt of telling someone, but also using the kiss goodbye as a description, which was kind of nice as well.
Yeah, very clever.
And I guess on that topic, the anti-prompt this time around, which was breaking the rule, show, don't tell, one that we've been saving up. How'd you find that?
Yeah, look, this is what I said earlier, that people just had a lot of fun with this. Arguably, nobody really can be disqualified when they're telling a story.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Because that's what we call the sort of the faithful approach of just you're literally telling a story in some way when you put it down on the screen or on paper. So that's fine. That's that side of things. But the literal takes on the anti-prompt is where it always gets fun. And we had some good ones. I think we had like a fete, like F-E-T-E, like a school fair, where there was a fortune teller. Yeah, it's a fortune teller, the character kept saying. So tell me. That was fun. We had a couple of confession booths, which is a double play. Obviously, there's our booths again.
That's right.
But also, when you're in the confession booth, well, you have to tell them it's dark. So there was some fun takes on that. The blind people being told, which is what that previous story I just called out.
Yeah, there were a few that did that, weren't there?
Yeah.
I guess it's a nice place to go because it allows you to still describe, to show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but of course it's through the act of telling. We also had a retelling of a famous fairy tale in a Cinderella story that's retold in a fun monologue. I'm looking at the Cinderella story in a whole new light.
Yes, I don't think the original was about vajankles.
That's right. That did have vajankles in it. Oh, I thought I'd got that out of my brain. So, Another story, which I thought was very clever in the way that it, because you often hear about this in court cases, is the story was a whole bunch of eyewitness accounts. So it was like how the witnesses told what they saw and they kept changing. And that's actually a phenomenon that you do hear does happen. So that was, again, a clever way to talk about how people are telling you what they think they saw. So that was pretty cool. And there was another one called Guided Relaxation. And the person was kind of finding it difficult to relax, but the sort of the mantras kept coming through the story. So that was a little bit of fun as well. One I do want to call out, well, there's two actually, just to round off the sort of the creativity of the anti-prompt, because they kind of went sort of double creative, really. There's one called Upping the Ante by Brandon Wu, and that's all about a poker game. And so we've got someone who doesn't want to show their cards, but also they've got a very clear tell. So it was, it was very literal, but it was very clever the way that there was sort of the showing and the telling comes into a poker game. So I thought that was quite well done, Brandon. But one that might even be even more clever than that was a story called An Archaic and Brutal Word, and that is by Torinell, a previous Pointy Trophy recipient, actually, because in this story, we have a character who is lying about the fact that she's pregnant. So she's telling lies about showing.
Yeah, well, that was a very original take.
It was, if you think about show, don't tell, flip that around.
Yeah, well, tell, don't show,
so that was that.
Yeah.
So that was very clever, Torinell. Probably not surprising to see your name against that one. Very, very clever stuff. Yeah, so in anti-prompt, I salute everybody. You gave it a great sending off. Some really creative stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you for your help with judging again, Dean. And I know you did have a good time looking at the clever puns and the clever takes on those.
Oh, clever puns. Can I just interrupt there? There's a couple of little...
I've set him off.
There's a couple of titles I just want to call out.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the clever pun reminded me, because apparently that's my reputation. There was a story by Deirdre Witt Lovegren, and it's called Monotony. It's a couple playing Monopoly. And as well, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to the monotony of Monopoly, but in this case, it was very cleverly done, how each kind of milestone of the game reflected their relationship. So I thought that was very fun. And if you can indulge me with two more, I'll leave off with Bastard Keys. I just love that title because that's sort of the story of my life as well. I don't have one of those little things that tells me where to find my keys. I probably need one. That was a story by Sam James. And
they're behind the couch, Dean. That's what they always are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So Bastard Keys, that was a story about someone who was convinced their keys are actually running off of their own accord.
But no, spoiler alert, the keys were running off.
Well, that's right, yeah. But the final one, which seems like a nice way to end, is a story by Lynn O'Caro, and I just like the title. It's called Kiss My Ass, Susan.
Not Kiss My Booty, Susan. I feel like missed opportunity for Kiss My Booty.
That's true, actually. As I said, not as many booties as we thought, but certainly a lot of good stories. So congrats, everyone. And once again, it's always a real privilege to read what you guys come up with, and always amazing where your brains go to. So if you guys will have me back, I'd love to do it again.
No, we'd love to have you back.
But,
thank you, Dean, for all your help. And thank you for sharing your thoughts as well. I know we all have slightly different approaches to our judging, so it's nice to get that mixed view, I guess, and give each story its due.
It is interesting to see that we do think differently about stories. So, yeah, kiss my ass, Ed and Amanda.
It's right on, Dean. Come on. Let's get on board.
On. See you later, guys.
Thanks, Dean. Bye.
So we'll be doing some more shout outs a bit later on. But for now, let's get to some of our listener/participant questions.
Sounds good.
And the first one comes from Jenny E.
Hi, this is Jenny E. And I need to apologize to Amanda for an element in my story called Would You Rather. One character was named Amanda, which is actually the real life name of my lifelong best friend. I wasn't even thinking about you, Amanda, the host. And sadly, in the story, my Amanda character dies by passing out in a cereal bowl. Ooh. So I just want to say, I'm sorry, that was in no way fan fiction, nor do I have any ill wishes to you. It was just a total accident that I didn't even realize until after I submitted, and then I felt terrible. You rock. Love the podcast.
Well, thanks for calling in, Jenny. Look, it's okay. I am well aware that my name is extremely common. So we do often get Amanda stories, Ed stories. We don't assume they're all about us, so that's okay. And in fact, I certainly didn't assume this one was about me, although I am a little bit worried now because you say that you might have implied you were drowning me in cereal, but like you're fine drowning your best friend in cereal. So is she okay? Are you?
I need to apologise to her.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks for ringing in and appreciate you and appreciate your story. Thanks so much.
And we actually did get a lot of fan fiction this round, much more than usual.
Yeah, what was that about? I don't know. Was it just like everyone's just doing their like last hurrah kind of thing?
Yeah, it could be just a response to the anti-prompt ending. Everyone's being a little bit more playful. But we actually wanted to shout out some of those little fanfics this round just because there were so many of them.
There were so many and they were good fun.
So the first one's all in the title. This is a story by Zara Eloise Rowe, and the title's quite a long one. Not quite an easy farewell to write. Parting is such sweet sorrow, and I always leave it too late because I'm the epitome of anti-prompt when dealing with difficult matters.
Love it. So you've actually embodied the anti-prompt. You are
Yes.
anti-prompt. Love it. And also want to just note as well that that's our not quite right title for the round because we've had one every round or something close to it. So yeah, thanks for keeping that tradition alive as well, Zara.
That's right. For 9 rounds, we've had one, and usually just one.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
usually just one. Yeah.
Another title one, although goes deeper than that, but this is An Anti-Impromptu Parting by Christoph, which is a bit of a fanfic about the anti-prompt.
Very cute.
And now we get a little bit more personal with, of course, Holly Victoria Louise Sadowski with The Backdoor Escape, presumably sequel or prequel maybe to Johnson & Johnson.
You're saying they're from the same universe?
From the Sadowski-verse.
Oh, the Sadowski-verse. Oh, yes, that's a strange and unfortunate place.
So in this one features a character called Ned,
Subtle.
no relation, and another character called Andy, who are cellmates. who devise an escape that involves having, well, a phone up Ned's arse.
Ned's ass, was it?
Yeah.
Nice.
A phone this time, not a candle. Or a,
Well, that was Trevor, but yeah.
but, it's nice that people are thinking about me in that way. It's reassuring in a way. I don't know what to make of that. But thank you, Holly. It was entertaining as always.
It was indeed. Unsettling too, on a level.
A little bit unsettling.
A little bit. One of those ones where you're like, I didn't actually see anything, but I can't unsee it. Do you know what I mean?
I do. In another story entitled A Mind Drives Infernal Instruments, A Mouth of Bleeding Wounds, A Scribbling Hand of Careless Ruin by Justin Kramers, who's a former Daredevil, who makes allusions in this story about spending money on having a silly podcast review his story. So that was very meta.
A silly podcast.
A silly podcast.
Oh, well, that can't be about us.
Sally Riser Simon, who submitted a story entitled A Woman with a Knack for Choosing the Wrong Sort of Man, ironically ends up dead at the hands of her best friend who should have checked the safety. A lot of long titles this round. I don't know if you agree.
I feel like people are just getting a lot of their feelings out,
Yeah, just taking advantage of those extra words that they have at their disposal, which is good. You got to use everything at your disposal to win. But this one gets the shout out because of a mention of Mandy, Ed, Dean, and Dave, all characters in this story. So, yeah. We've got Not Quite Smitten by Kenneth Rowland, which is just a great fanfic story.
My favourite part of that story is when Margaret Atwood says "fuck you" to you.
That was a great scene. I think it's one of those that we should consider reading if we ever get around to it. I'd like to read that story. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good fun.
The next story by Trevor Flanagan called The Fine Line Between Prophecy, Guidance and Lunacy, in which the protagonist murders people because of the prompts and in very, troubling ways. So please don't murder anyone because of the prompts.
PSA. Yeah. We love drama. When we're talking about that, we mean on the page.
In the story is great. And we love it. Great story. Lots of fun. Thank you, Trevor. Finally, I want to mention Kerry Goldsworthy's Roast Dinner and a Show, which just breaks records for the most references to the podcast that you can possibly fit into 500 words.
It's got stalker vibes.
It does. Some of those things, she mentioned...
Deep cut.
Very deep cut. She mentioned how I never got my pen license, which I don't remember ever talking about.
You totally mentioned that on the podcast. Neither of us have our pen licenses.
Oh.
We're just out
here.
here.
The police.
I know. So I absolutely love getting these stories, and I'm always just pissing myself as I'm reading them and having such a great time. I feel like I have to say, writing a story for your audience very clearly is a great thing to do and a great way to get our attention, but you still need to also deliver a great story if you want to make the long list. And so it's not like your free ticket, I guess, to the top of the charts there, but it is a ticket to our hearts every single time, and it is good fun. So thank you so much for all of those fun stories. And I would say, I don't know how you feel, Ed, but some of the ones that may not make the long list or may not progress, certainly to shortlist or whatever, that maybe we should just read them anyway. At some point do some Patreon content.
We've been talking about doing a Patreon for a while, and that might be one of the things that comes up. Definitely some of these would be a lot of fun to read out.
I think so. Only obviously if the authors are happy for us to do that, but I think it would be good fun.
Absolutely. And look, that's just a short selection of the stories. There were plenty more that referenced our names that may or may not have been fan fiction, but we're very grateful and thank you for sending those our way. So our next voicemail comes from Michael Stone in Canada.
Hello, Amanda and Ed. This is Michael Stone calling in once again from the world's most boring capital, Ottawa, Canada. I saw a thread over in the Writing Battle forums about show don't tell and about how overused it can be, overly given as a piece of writing advice, and how overzealous some people can take it. And I somewhat agree. And it got me thinking about instances of telling that I've really enjoyed and that I've really appreciated. So I wanted to ask you two, if you have your favorite instances of telling in fiction that you'd like to share.
So thanks for your question, Michael. And yeah, like all rules, there are always exceptions to the rules, and there are always times where it doesn't apply.
Yeah, I think show don't tell in particular, most people who say show don't tell, they don't say never tell, because it's useful. When we say telling in this sense, we mean more direct, just stating of facts kind of thing. That can be a really efficient way of communicating information in a story, and especially in flash fiction. Sometimes you need to just get things out quickly. You can't sort of luxuriate in every single detail, or you'll miss the plot, basically. So I think you raise a valid point, but I will say after this round, more than ever, I feel like it's a great piece of advice. And I think more often than not, your story will benefit from you heeding that advice and at least analysing your story on that basis. Like, you don't have to change everything. And again, it's not that you can never tell, but it's very evident when someone could have done more, I think, and could have presented something in a more evocative or emotional way and less direct to elevate their story. So I have to sort of disagree with Michael there a little bit and say, I think it's actually really valid advice, especially when you're starting out, to try and challenge yourself to evoke a story, not just kind of tell it as is, you know?
Yeah, look, I do agree that sometimes it can feel very forced, but I would say the strength of Show Don't Tell is like the level of empathy that it creates. So most of the information that we receive about real life situations comes from observation. So I think when we Show Don't Tell, what it tends to do is just make it seem a lot more natural. As sometimes you can have characters saying things, exposing backstory, for example, and it doesn't come off as natural because that's not what would happen in that situation. So sometimes showing just comes about more naturally and leverages that natural empathy.
Yeah, and we'll probably get a bit more into Show Don't Tell a bit later on when we're talking about the anti-prompt specifically. But I think there are instances where showing is like more often than not a really valuable thing to do. And one of those is in the world of emotion. Yeah. Right. And we've talked about that sort of sub-rule, and it's in our articles about never name an emotion. Yes. And I think that is a really sound piece of advice. And I think that's because, like you say, you know, when you're interacting with people, the way you interpret how they're feeling is not usually because they tell you in black and white terms how they're feeling. I mean, they may, but more often than not, you're picking up on much more subtle cues, or sometimes very obvious cues, that have an impact on you. Someone's shouting is going to have much more of an impact and tell you everything you need to know about their current state of mind, more so than them just approaching you and just being like, look, I'm really angry right now. And in fact, those two things are very different in their impact on you as well. So I think when it comes to emotion, showing is really valid. I would say telling can be really useful when it comes to more like establishing your setting and your time period and things like that. Like, look, just give us the information we need really quickly, set us up at the start. Don't obscure the facts as we're opening the story. Like, make it very clear who we're looking at, where they are, and go from there. And that's not to say that you can't, you know, weave in some evocative details in your setting, for example, and that can be really beneficial as well, but it's probably less necessary than when we're talking about emotions and so on. So I think we've used the example before, but if you're at the beach, you can just sort of say they're at the beach. Yeah. And that just paints a picture for you already. And you can choose to show that more evocatively, but if you're opening a story and you're sort of saying something a bit more vague and obscure, like the wind whipped off the cliff, and okay, that's great, but do I have a picture of being on the beach or am I up on the cliff? And you start to sort of obscure the picture that you're creating. So I guess it's all about just the tools that are in your belt and deciding how you're going to use them, knowing what impact it's going to have on your reader. It's just like anything. Show Don't Tell is just another tool. And when you fully understand it and have sort of control over it, yeah, for sure you can break it when it makes sense to.
So, Michael, you actually asked for like an example that we might have of times when telling is better or that we enjoyed the telling. I couldn't think of an example where I enjoyed the telling, but I can think of an example where I felt a writer was showing too much. And that was in the book The Passenger, the last book by Cormac McCarthy, which I never actually managed to finish, partially because of this issue. So Cormac McCarthy is one of my favourite writers, but reading The Passenger, it felt like just a sequence of things happening, being shown, but there was like zero telling, no exposition. Often you don't know the person who's walked into the room, who they are, what their relationship is, because it's never told. It's just shown. And I
you
found
end up
that
a bit like lost at sea kind of thing.
Lost at sea, and I can see how that can be rewarding because, you know, through the course of the book, you start to figure things out and put the pieces together. But I found it very frustrating. I found that it stripped a lot of the emotional energy out of each scene because you didn't know like the critical information, and sometimes you just need to be told. So, you know, you also need to be conscious of the reader's experience and not just follow the rule to its extreme degree.
You can totally overblow it, and especially in flash fiction, like I said, like sometimes you need that efficiency. You can't get swept away in every detail. I can think of two great examples of telling that I do love though.
Yep.
And one would be The Old Man and the Sea.
Yep.
When you look at Hemingway's writing, you could probably describe it as more telling. It's very direct. It's simple sentences. And yet when those sentences come together, it's very evocative. So that was probably our first episode. Our first episode where we talked about The Old Man and the Sea, but very artfully done, this way of stating facts, but nevertheless evoking feelings and a sense of place through those carefully chosen sentences. So very efficient and very still captivating, I think. So if you want a great example of someone who uses telling to great effect, then by all means, Hemingway's a perfect example.
Yeah, because telling in that way can form part of a voice that's compelling as well.
Exactly. And then, so my second example, and this would be, I would still call it my favourite book, even though it's been so long since I read it that I barely remember it, but it's A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Many of us, I imagine, know the famous opening lines of A Tale of Two Cities.
It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times.
It was the blurst of times. And it goes on, right, for several paragraphs, in that way. And that's very telling, right?
Yeah.
And that has a certain vibe to it too. And it's one of the most well-remembered opening lines of any book ever. And yet it is so telling. And it really is very much setting that scene for the story that's to come and giving us this sort of historical context.
Yeah.
And from the author's perspective as well, like just imbuing that with his own thoughts and on the state of the world at that time and that sort of thing. So, and another author who does that to great effect and could be looked at as a bit of a hero of telling perhaps. But, you know, handle with care. Like we're not all Charles Dickens, you know, and the writing style that was popular when Charles Dickens was writing is not the writing style that really sells books now. So it's up to you and how you want to create your art ultimately, but just being mindful of the effect that it's going to have.
Look, writing rules, and this is part of like what the anti-prompt is all about. Writing rules aren't there to be enforced like a speed limit, right? They're there to highlight and try to correct for common problems that writers have in their writing. You know, our very first anti-prompt was avoid adverbs. And that doesn't mean that you need to strip every single adverb out of your writing because you can just kill it doing it that way, remove any flavour out of it. But you should definitely be aware if you're using, you know, just do a scan. Am I using too many adverbs? And it's the same with show, don't tell. You know, I mentioned Cormac McCarthy, but there are many more writers that are over-telling than are over-showing like Cormac McCarthy. So, you know, the rule is there to correct the majority of writers in one way rather than the other. So I think everyone can benefit from at least looking at their writing and saying, well, rather than just tell the reader this, can I show it to them in a way that makes them empathize and connect with it a little bit more fully? And you don't need to do that with everything. If there's a sunrise, there's a sunrise. You don't need to describe the sunrise necessarily unless it adds to the story.
A little bugbear, the sunrise. But look, we said we wouldn't go on too long and we have.
Yes.
So look, let's move on to our next question. So thank you so much, Michael. I mean, we could go on and on about that, couldn't we?
Okay, so our next question comes from Stephanie Therese from Melbourne.
This is Stephanie Therese from Melbourne in Australia. My question is just about flash fiction and wanting to know if there are any updates that you have about judging now that it seems like a lot of the judging is starting to wrap up. Would really just be keen to hear anything that you can share with us at this stage. Super, super interested to start hearing those stories once you're ready to release them.
So thanks, Stephanie. We are really excited about Flash Fiction. We can't wait to talk about it. Can't wait to get the stories out there, but there is still a lot of reading to do. I mentioned earlier in this episode that this round of the Flash Fiction Prize has about 160,000 odd words. So we received about 500 entries to Flash Fiction at 1,500 words, and that's about 750,000 words. So just in context, many times the word count that we get on an average round. So that's up there with like the longest novels ever written. And of course, each story deserves to be given the right amount of attention and consideration. So we want to make sure we give ourselves a bit more time to fully read them and judge them and kind of categorize them and give them the attention they deserve. So it's taking a bit longer than planned. We do have help from our guest judges, Elise, Julia and Joe. So we've had multiple eyes on the stories, and we want to have multiple eyes on every story. So it's not just one person gets to decide whether that story makes it through or not. We'd like to have a few different opinions and ideally either Amanda or I reading all of the stories.
Yeah, but a very valid question because, look, we are keen and we realise it's been a long wait, especially for those who like entered right away when we
Yes.
first opened the comp, which was back in Feb this year.
That's right.
So it's been a long time. But look, it is 100% high on our agenda. We are very, very keen. And unfortunately, we're not in a position to give a date right now. But rest assured, we will be giving updates as soon as we've got a little bit more information. We'll be sharing it with you.
I guess informally, my objective is to finish the reading by the end of the calendar year. So like end of 2025. So then early 2026, we can get together and work out the judging and how we're going to kind of break it all down and record episodes and that kind of thing. So it might take a little while, but...
Yeah, because that's a little bit of an extra step for the Flesh Fiction comp, is that we actually have to figure out, based on what we end up with, how exactly we want it to play out. So we don't have a plan in advance of how many episodes we're going to record, or whether we do, like we do now, a long list and a short list, because we don't know exactly if that's going to be appropriate. So that's still some work to do in that regard as well, planning how we're going to announce everything.
We might want to announce like each category separately as a separate episode and read a few more stories. We really want to get these out there, and we're like, it's not like we've forgotten.
No, super keen. So thank you for asking, and thank you so much for being impatient, just like me. I'd like to say thank you for your patience, but I know when none of us are patient about this, we're all super keen. So we will be sharing more information as soon as we can.
So speaking of flesh and flesh-related things, we've got a little voicemail from Caro Robson.
Hi, Ed and Amanda. This is Caro Robson from South Africa. I'm the person who included a vajankle in my story this round. And just wanted to give you guys credit, because were it not for your sex episode earlier this year, I never would have known about its existence. It's become a bit of a joke in our writing group, and one of our members, Victor, always says that he's going to start his own religion and call it the Evangelicals. So, yeah, just thought I'd share that with you. And also, thank you for a great competition and a wonderful podcast.
So thanks, Caro, and you're absolutely welcome for that little lesson. Vajankle was one of those things that once I'd heard about, I couldn't not tell people about. It's such like an absurd manifestation of human sexuality. So I'm glad it's bringing joy to people's lives. And if it does end up as a religion, I'm sure that there'll be very many keen people wanting to join that religion.
Do you think they'll do the whole bathing the feet ritual in that religion?
I think it might be central to the religion, yes. So Caro's story was called The Fairy Godmother's Monologue, to be performed alone on stage, directly addressing the audience. And it was the only mention of Vajankle this round, which I'm actually a little bit surprised at, given that we had a boot prompt. We didn't get many foot fetish stories. I'm a bit surprised about that. So.
Surprised/disappointed. Which emotion are you going to name?
Horniness? Emotion?
Oh, Lordy.
Anyway, on that note, thank you, Caro.
Moving on.
And also, speaking of Flesh Fiction, our next voicemail comes from Elise Scott, who is one of our guest judges for Flesh Fiction.
Hi, Ed and Amanda. It's Elise Scott calling from Connecticut in the United States. And I first want to just say thank you so much, because every time that I interact with the Not Quite Writerverse, whether it's joining the competition, whether it's listening to the podcast, or the incredible honor of reading for the Flesh Fiction competition, I always feel like my writing is leveled up by the experience. So I know it's an incredible amount of work and effort and love that you guys put into this. And it's wonderful that you're creating this space for all of us writers to grow and learn and form this incredible community. So thank you. My question is, what are you watching and or reading right now? I have a hungry brain for good media, and you guys, from the things that you've called out or discussed previously on episodes of the podcast, you have very different tastes, but I've enjoyed almost everything either of you have talked about. So I would love to hear what is compelling to you out there right now.
Thank you so much, Elise, for your kind words, and also for helping out with Flesh Fiction. Like, you've done an excellent job. Your comments are very thorough, and yeah, we love it.
You know, you can hear in Elisa's voice how lovely and sweet they are, and that is reflected in the comments on all the stories as well. So if your story has been read by Elise, which it would have been if it's in the kink and taboo category or the literary erotica or the other genre or the fantasy and supernatural, Elise did a lot of work, a lot of reading, then it's been very much handled with care and received
a lot of consideration.
So thank you, Elise, for all your help. But in answer to your question as to what we're reading or watching right now, speaking for myself, exclusively entries to not quite right competitions at this point. I don't watch or read anything else at the moment outside of my day job.
The reading question is easy. It is just flash fiction, and Poe is on the reading list as well, which I haven't gotten to yet, but that's the next in the list. And I've got a bookshelf full of to-be-read books that I will probably never get around to reading. So I'll have to come to terms with that. But movies, like watching movies and TV shows, there's a couple that I've been watching. I watched a movie called Weapons, which is a new horror movie, and I hated it. Everyone loves it, but I thought it was so bad.
Okay.
I watched recently Caught Stealing, which is a new movie starring Austin Butler, Zoe Kravitz, and Matt Smith. Do you remember Prince Philip from The Crown? Matt Smith?
Oh, okay.
Well, this movie has Matt Smith in it playing like a punk in the 90s with like the full mohawk.
Oh.
It's quite funny.
Okay.
It's really basic, but it's a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed that movie. It reminded me of like movies from the 90s, like Trainspotting, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, except it's American, but it has that same kind of fun energy to it that I think is missing from a lot of movies. Just
taking themselves
crazy
too seriously
stuff happening.
So the only movie, I was desperate to go see The Long Walk, desperate. Then it was gone out of the cinemas in the blink of an eye. It's not playing here on the Central Coast, and so I missed it. So I think it's now available and I will watch it at some point. But Andy doesn't want to watch it with me because it's too depressing. But I am so keen because it's my favourite Stephen King, and that's what I'm keen to watch, but I haven't actually watched it. And then the thing that I have watched on repeat is K-pop Demon Hunters, and that is it. So
I managed to avoid that one.
I think I've seen the whole thing, but only in bursts on about 30 separate occasions. So
what I am keen to watch, have you heard about, there's a new series called Pluribus, which is by Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So this is like the new one. And it stars Rhea Seehorn, who played Kim Wexler in Better Call Saul. Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah.
Better Call Saul? And she was so good in that show. And I'm avoiding all, I think this is a science fiction-y type thing, but I'm avoiding all spoilers. But I can't wait to watch that show. Hopefully it's like his other shows. I think I really like his writing and his style of like filmmaking for TV. Just side note, as a tangent, we're talking about show don't tell in writing. Like Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad were so good for that kind of thing in ways that you just don't get on other TV shows. I remember, I think it was Breaking Bad. I can't remember if it was Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. There was one episode that started with Mike Ehrmantraut just doing stuff for like 10 or 15 minutes and no explanation. You're just watching him do things, and then you figure it out and you piece together what he's actually doing. And I think he was building some sort of tracking device that goes into a car for some purpose. But no other show I've ever seen will just trust the viewer for 10, 15 minutes of just action. One person, no dialogue, just sitting there doing stuff. So I felt like that's, as far as show don't tell goes, that's a really great example. But that's all I can give you as well, because I don't have much time for watching TV and movies either, unfortunately. So thanks, Elise. And our last message comes from Natalie Miniker.
Hi there, this is Natalie Miniker from Worcestershire in the UK. One quick question for you guys. When you're reading stories, are you able to tell who has read the article that you wrote or the podcast episode you produced about how to win the Not Quite Right prize? I ask this because a couple of competitions ago, I was ever so proud of my entry that I wrote called How Meta is Too Meta. It was an incredibly clever story about a writer who couldn't come up with an idea for a story. And I submitted it, and then the next day listened to the episode where you identified that one of the biggest cliches for writing competitions is writers writing about writing. I just was wondering if you are able to tell when you're reading stories if people have actually listened to your advice in advance about it. Keep up the good work, guys, and write on.
So thanks for your question, Natalie. And first of all, I just have to say, I don't want to discourage people from writing stories that have been written before. You know, we've mentioned it before, like there's no such thing as an original idea. And any of the story ideas that appear in that article, which is about, I think it's called Flash Fiction Tropes, that we have up on our website, any of those ideas, they're fair game. You just have to be aware that because they're common, you need to do something a little bit different with them.
Yeah.
They aren't probably not going to be enough on their own to win a competition. But with your own twist or your own take or some like really compelling character voice or something just a little bit surprising, then by all means, you know, go for it. That's why that article's there, because that wasn't information I think that was really ever available to anyone prior to that. You don't have that insight to what's being received on the other end, apart from maybe what's shared in forums and so on. You're not getting that full context of the whole range of stories and what common mistakes are or common themes are and all those sorts of things. So take that information by all means and use it.
And don't feel bad about it either, because I've written meta stories as well. And I've written stories that I've thought, oh, this is so clever and I'm the only person who's come up with this. Come to find that, no, every round there's dozens that come through.
But that's, I think, part of why when you write that story, you feel so good about it, because it resonates, right? That's the thing. It's just resonating with a lot of people. That's why it's popular and that's why it's common. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just like, be aware it's common. And therefore, if you're in a writing competition, it's going to be less likely to stand out on that basis. Now, with all that said, can we tell if someone has read our articles in advance of writing their submission? And I would say yes, sometimes. So I have noticed a huge uptick in the naming of characters in the opening of stories, which I think is really great. Honestly, I think it's improved the quality. I think naming characters and setting us up with a very clear character at the outset of the story is a good thing to do. So I'm very happy to see that. And in some cases, it's very obvious. And I just want to shout out in particular Jenny Lyons-Bell, who came to my workshop earlier and has been to one previously when we were at Words on the Waves. And she's a daredevil this round. And her very first line, I believe, was, his name is Matt. His name was Matt. Amazing. Thanks, Jenny. Like, I can see what you're doing there and it's all a bit of fun. But yeah, apart from that, sometimes we get direct references to the articles. I believe in the last round, I made a little crack about Holly in the article saying Holly crossed the line. And then that came back in one of the stories, or two of the stories, I think, in the end as well. So we do sometimes get that little playfulness that comes back. But in general, look, I think we get such a wide scope of stories. People come to it with their own experience, their own learning, their own writing practice and reading practice as well, that we're all just like a big pile of our influences, right? So maybe sometimes that influence comes directly from the anti-prompt articles and so on. But, you know, more often than not, it's come from everything else that's poured into you as a writer prior to that.
And we don't expect everyone to read like every single article that we release and listen to every single podcast episode. But look, we believe that the information that we put out there is useful.
Yeah. And look, honestly, like we pride ourselves, I suppose, on being very open about what works for us and what doesn't work for us. And so by all means, go and fill up on that, because it's just our opinion, but at the same time, we're the audience. So if you can sort of get a good handle on what we do like and don't like and what we see as problems or issues, then that's only going to give you a bit of a leg up in this competition.
So thanks, Natalie, for your question. And let's move on to our general feedback that we collect from the general feedback form.
All right. So I've got some questions and comments here that I'll share. So I'll start with some of the critiques. You know, we can take it to some things that people thought could do with improving. A comment that I saw a couple of times was just relating to the outdated style of the forum. You know, it sort of looks a bit old school. And just in response to that, because I agree, right, it does look a little bit old school. It's got all the features you need, but I guess it doesn't have sort of that real modern look and feel. I will say that Max Bjork has spoiled you all over at Writing Battle with his epic website skills. And, you know, the forums over there look really great. But look, the features are all the same. But I do think that we have some work to do just in terms of making it a little bit more user-friendly as to where things are on the page. Like, it's very busy at the moment. If you're coming to our community page for the first time, it's like there's a lot here. And we would like to simplify that, make it a little bit of a smoother run to just sort of post and read your first entry kind of thing. And to make it like easier to give and receive feedback as well. We really want to maximize that. So that's on the agenda. And we do want to make some tweaks to the community space.
No commitments on time frame, but like the general website upgrades and improvements are in the works, and I've already started on some of the migration activity and rebuild stuff. It obviously takes time, and we have plenty of other priorities at the moment as well. But the community area is one of the first that I want to kind of separate off into a separate bit. So if we can do that and get some upgrades done and some look and feel changes at the same time, that will be good. So it might end up being kind of one of those sooner rather than later things, but we'll see how things pan out. But we're aware.
Yeah, like from our perspective, we are, we've got full-time jobs. We wish this was our full-time job, but it's not. So I guess our thinking is to just continuously improve. Like we want to make things available and then we'll just make them better. Like we're not going to wait till things are perfect or they will never happen. So another one that's popped up again, a few people. So it is something we've responded to before, and it is something that you'll find in information on the website when it comes to the entry form. But this was just a request for visible tabs. So, when you enter your story, a lot of people want that tab space at the beginning of each paragraph from a formatting perspective. And you can't see that. You can't see tabs. And even if you insert them, they don't sort of appear in the WYSIWYG view.
Yeah, there's going to be limits to what you can do. Like it's a rich text editor and it's not a fully featured word processor.
Yeah.
So if you paste from a Word document that has like tabs set up, you're obviously not going to capture that same setup because it's not a real tab. It's just, it looks different. It presents different in the form. I think you can probably do a manual tab
you can. So
in the form.
Here's how it works. Basically, if you type in a tab, right, as opposed to, and we've talked about this before, but as opposed to using like your ruler in Microsoft Word to create an indent, if you type in a tab, that will come in the version that we see. We will see it, but you won't. Yeah. Even when you go to submit and it shows you again your story back to you, it won't give you the tab spaces there, but we will see it for whatever reason. That's how it works. But ultimately, I just want to make it really clear, it does not matter. Okay, because at this point, we're just reading stories. They all look pretty uniform when they come to us, assuming you haven't gone too crazy with the text editor. Yeah. But they all look quite uniform, and it's not something that we ever notice when we're judging the tab spacing at the start of a paragraph. Each paragraph comes neatly spaced and clear and easy to read for us, and so it's not necessary. It's something that we would add if we're like getting to publication stage, in the anthology, but it's not something we need at judging stage. So look, just don't worry about it. Like we understand it's a little bit frustrating if you're used to seeing your writing in that format, but we wanted to use that rich text field so that we can offer all the other features in terms of bolding text and italicizing text and that sort of thing, which are the main, I guess, features that we want from that rich text editor. But yeah, tab stop's not so important. I know it's hard to let go, but not necessary. And I guess just flowing from that as well, some people sort of still are having trouble with the word count. And there is a little instruction there for you in the form. It is a bit of a sensitive thing, the word counter. But again, that's just the interplay between this rich text editor and the word count function. So if you're copying in text that has a lot of formatting already pre-applied, it's sometimes counting that HTML code of that as a word. It's frustrating. So the only advice we can give is paste everything just plain text into the field and do your formatting once it's in the field. Or
you can progressively paste it through. It's just that when you drop the whole story in, sometimes if there's just a couple of extra characters that are applied to the formatting, it can take it over 500 words.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And the last little bit of feedback that I wanted to touch on was, and this is now, a few people have said this, that they struggle with the use of the word midnight when we're talking about the deadline. So we say it's midnight Sunday, Sydney time. And wherever we write it now on the website or in your emails or wherever you see it, it should say midnight and then in brackets end of day to make it clear. And I think some people come at this with a hardline approach of, no, midnight is the morning, right? The morning of the next day. And that's technically true, but it is also true that midnight is a common expression for the end of the night in a more colloquial sense, I suppose. So both are correct.
Either option is going to lead to confusion for some people, basically.
So, which is why we say end of day now to clarify. But I'm asking you, Ed, now here on air, do you think it would be helpful to people if we change our deadline to 11:59 p.m? Would that be less confusing? I believe New York City Midnight do that, which is ironic. They probably started at midnight and ended up having to change. I had thought we had solved the problem by saying end of day.
I mean, it makes no practical difference, right, to the submission deadline. But if it's clearer, then That makes sense to me.
Maybe we'll do that if that helps, because it's, it's only a couple of people, but it seems to be a bit of a stumbling block. I think my issue was I just thought, well, that's just going to make the time zone maths even harder.
Yeah,
but,
it could actually introduce other problems as people like miscount by an hour, because they're like looking at 11, but it's actually...
Yeah, this is the thing. It's tricky. Yeah. Time zone maths is the worst. The worst kind of maths.
This is something that we've kind of tweaked every single round to try and make everything clearer and clearer, but still, I don't know, maybe 11:59 will solve the problem.
We'll look into it. Thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it. And we certainly don't want you having that frustration of thinking like you have to submit a whole day early or something. Like, we don't want people to do that. All right. So this one was sort of more of a question. So Doug M says, I enjoyed participating in this contest. I hope the judges enjoy the story. As far as improving things, I'm not sure, except that perhaps in future there's room for judging comedy in a different venue than drama. Sometimes I feel that comedy is not as valued as other prose.
I think we do judge comedy quite highly. Generally, we've had comedy feature quite highly, and we take every story as it is at face value. When we rate a story initially, we don't think of it as like this is a comedy, this is a drama, and try and compare them at that level. It's just, I like this story, or no, I didn't like this story, and where does it rank? So, we've had comedy stories
do very well. We've had winning comedy stories. Yeah, I think at Not Quite Right, you're pretty safe with your comedy. And I do know that it's probably a challenge elsewhere to get your comedy seen or taken seriously. I guess it depends on your audience again, and you know your audience in this case, and you know that we like comedy, and so that's fine. But in the case where you've got judges who you don't know who they are, then you don't know how your comedy is going to land with them and whether your vajankle story is going to go over well or not. It could go one way or the other. And then, of course, in peer judge competitions, you're just then confronted with a whole range of views on what is funny.
Never know.
You never know what you're going to get. As far as valuing it goes, I value it highly. I love a bit of comedy. We need comedy in this world at the moment. But we're getting this reputation, I think, for loving fart jokes and all that sort of stuff. And we do, because we're immature. But I love really deep, moving stories as well. 2 stories this round made me cry. Yeah. And that is also wonderful. Yeah. I love to feel something. I love to leave a story feeling changed or reflecting on things. And sometimes that's a funny thing. And many times it's something sad or something challenging or just even something, nostalgic or whatever it might be. Just interesting on some level. But we'll see. We'll see what comes out in the shortlist this round and the long list. I just wanted to mention as well, not to sound totally up ourselves or whatever, but a few people in the feedback said it was their favourite competition, which is so lovely. And look, I don't know if you're just sucking up, but at this, you should know it's a blind judging and we're not going to see that comment until it's way too late. But it's very lovely to hear. And I've been getting a sense just in the community, the flash fiction community online at the moment, that there's a lot of fatigue at the end of the year. People are just a little bit storied out. Yeah. And some people are feeling like their creative buckets are pretty empty. Yeah. So, and I'm the same. My creative bucket's pretty empty. I find it hard to write, and I've, banned myself from writing stories at this stage. But yeah, it's hard, and there's a lot of comps and they're all so great. And it's like, which one do I enter, and do I have the capacity and all that sort of stuff? And that's for each person to decide. But, I hope you do come back to our competition because, it is a good time. But yeah, I also understand sometimes you need to go fill your bucket as well. And you can't just constantly give your stories all the time. Sometimes you got to go and, watch movies, do some reading of your own and fill back up again so that you can create again. So yes, whether it is your favourite competition or whether you're just sucking up, we appreciate it.
We totally do. Actually, this round, as the stories were coming in, I had the general feedback thing popping up without any names, so it was all anonymous, but just so I could keep an eye on things, make sure there was nothing going wrong. But it was nice to see those comments come up in real time as people were submitting and getting little thank yous and nice comments. It's so rewarding that people are enjoying this and having fun, because we are.
Yeah, we are totally having fun, but it wouldn't be fun without everybody else having fun. So yeah. And I just wanted to call out this one comment from Elder. So our winner from last round, who said, this contest is so much fun thanks to your amazing energy on social media and the podcast. The environment you created made me feel like I could finally stop overthinking and censoring my work. It gave me the push to just submit what I loved without second guessing. Thank you.
Which paid off.
Yeah, it paid off. That's really nice to hear. I love that people feel free to express themselves. And look, it changes every round too. sometimes you just feel like writing something a bit dark or
Yeah.
like just getting a bit deep with it. And then other times you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to write something silly. Like, it's all welcome here. Like,
Yeah.
I think if you're having fun and just honouring your own instincts about what you want to create, I think that's really good.
It's very much a safe space. I mean, we received vajankle stories, we received phone up the bum stories, and it's all fine. It's all good. And like, there's nothing worse than censoring yourself and trying to fit like a mold of what everyone else is writing and what everyone else thinks is good, because that's not you.
Yeah.
And part of writing is self-expression, and you want to be able to like actually express yourself and be a little bit different to what everyone else is doing.
That's it. Really be yourself and put your own energy into it, because that's what this is about. It's about communicating, right? Like, you as the author putting yourself out there,
Yep.
which is why it hurts when you don't win,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And not everybody's going to win. There's going to be 343 disappointed people who didn't win this round. But when you connect with someone, like when someone sees your story and goes, oh, yes, I love that. Like, that's enough sometimes as well, especially when you know you've really put yourself into it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Elder, for sharing that little bit of wisdom, I guess, from a former winner. Reese A said, I love the NQW experience, so I'm sorry, but I have nothing of substance to insert in this box. Do I owe the jar $1 now?
I guess we could throw $1 in on your behalf.
Yep. Thanks, Reese. And Nick C said, my only suggestion is that competitions should maybe offer critique as a prize. You know, we talk about at Not Quite Right, we give like global feedback. That's what this episode is about. You'll also hear some in the Daredevil episodes. I mean, they're quite specific, but it'll be feedback that's relevant to everybody. And so, you know, we have that global feedback. We don't have the kind of individual feedback for each person. And we've talked about that before. It's just not something that is sustainable for us at the, you know, current price point or whatever. That's something that people pay more for elsewhere, and that's great. But I have some good news for Nick, which is that we've decided that our little bonus prize for the January competition, and this is the team prize, so a lucky draw prize for members of the winning team, will include a coaching package. That's one of the things that will be included in that prize. So yeah, that's going to be on offer in January. So if that's something that interests you, then yeah, absolutely, sign up. And then this is just a comment from Kathy P. Kathy said, once again, I was challenged. My daughter suggested that what I was doing was torture. I enjoy it. Not sure what that says about me.
Yeah, we've often spoken about writers being very masochistic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think basically it says you're a writer. I don't think it says anything else too much there, Kathy. And then finally, and this message comes from Holly Brandon, but I think Holly, her comment sort of summed up what a lot of people were saying in the feedback this round, just around the anti-prompt. So I just thought this was one good example. She said, farewell, anti-prompt. You have both enraged and inspired me, and I'll miss the stress you brought to my life and the creativity you brought to my writing. I can't wait to see what's next for this amazing contest. So yes, that sentiment was echoed throughout the feedback, and by us too. You know, we're going to miss the anti-prompt. It's been our problem child for a while, but you know, it did inspire some great things, and we hope that the new format, which as Ed said, we talked about in our most recent episode, that it's going to inspire even better stories. So,
absolutely.
But thank you, Holly, for your little farewell message there. And the anti-prompt told me to tell all of you that it'll miss you very much.
So we're going to get into our general shout-outs now, and starting with favourite titles. And beginning with one that I alluded to on Twitter and Blue Sky.
What? You were on Twitter and Blue Sky?
Was temporarily went insane, found my password, logged in.
Tore your eyes away from TikTok just long enough.
So I wrote, to the author of story number 523186, I sincerely apologise for reading a completely inappropriate meaning into the title of your story. It was, in fact, deeply heartfelt and emotional, and I need to get my mind out of the gutter. And I'm pleased to be able to finally reveal that story, and that story was submitted by Sarah Kennedy, former Daredevil, and the story was titled, I Need This Like I Need a Head in the Hole. So, yes.
I think you need to apologise.
Yes. Well, I have apologised already in my post, but I will apologise again to Sarah. That's not what you meant. But, and then I love that title. I love the little twist on that title. But,
I mean, the title's great in terms of reminding you of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. But my mind went elsewhere, let's just say. A different place. A different hole.
Oh, dear. All right, that'll do. And moving swiftly on to your next pick.
To my next pick. Pink. Oh my God, that was a Freudian slip, that one. My next pick for title comes from, of course, from Greg Schmidt.
Oh dear.
Who made the shortlist last round with a very serious story, but has returned to his potty mouth ways with the story CUNT.
Oh yeah, what does that spell?
I can't say it.
I can't say it.
I can't say it. So, Amanda, you're no longer doing the swearing stats, but this one might have been an all-time great. So, story CUNT contained, including in the title, 6 uses of the C-bomb, which I'm certain is a record because we've gone rounds with no uses.
Yeah.
Of the
Oh no,
C-bomb,
that's definitely a record. And didn't the protagonist in that story, by the end of the story, get triple cunted?
I think so.
Good times.
So thanks for that, Greg.
Where are we at on the pendulum for the next round, do you think?
Yeah,
with
it's
Greg?
really swinging, isn't it? So a few more fun titles by author David, Tales of the Dragon Lair, which reminded me of that scene from Shrek, if you'll recall. And from former winner Chad Frame, Downward Facing Doug, which is a perfect title for a story about a man named Doug who does yoga. A couple of intriguing titles that make you want to keep reading to see what they're all about. From Rachel Jones, The Great Infiltration and Hybrid Birth Initiative Can Kiss Its Crackless Butt Goodbye. Speaks for itself. From Romany Jane, Saint Karma's Fate, Come for the Paddy Pan Toffees, Stay for the Reckoning.
Bum, bum, bum.
From Trevor Flanagan, The Fine Lines Between Prophecy, Guidance and Lunacy, which I've mentioned in the context of fan fiction, but a good title as well.
That's Trevor just crossing the line again, as he does.
The Irony of a Maladaptive Mind by N.M. Fadsley. So yeah, another intriguing title. From Harrison Wall, AI did not write this story. So calling this one for tapping into something that is very much on our minds.
And I have to say, quite seriously, that made me super sus.
I know. It only made me more suspicious of that story. But like, this is a good opportunity just to restate, like, it is against the rules to use AI to write any part of your story.
Yeah, we do allow you to use it to like check your spelling and grammar and to do some like research, you know, you use it like a glorified Google or whatever. Just us caring about you as a human being more than anything, because we can't police it in any meaningful way, that we just want it to come from you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, please don't use it for creating stories, creating sentences or rewriting your sentences to create your story. Okay, so that was some pretty great titles there already, but yeah, I had a few of my own as well. So this one just had vibes for me, and it was Things I Don't Tell You in the Queue at Chipotle, and that was by Ben Daggers. I don't know what it is. Titles like that. There's some essence in there that makes it intriguing.
Yeah. It's not things I tell you, it's things I don't tell you. I think that's what makes it intriguing.
Okay. And do you think putting Chipotle in there is kind of like
just adds a little bit of specificity, a bit of
a modern reference? And you do get a sense already immediately of like when this story is being told.
That's true.
But yeah, anyway, I also enjoyed Upping the Ante by Brandon Wu. So in a round where we've been talking about the anti-prompt, saying goodbye to the anti-prompt, that stood out to me as well. We had Withering Nights by Liv Stenhouse, and this was a little bit of an exploration into ye olde writing, but just a little reference to Wuthering Heights, which I enjoyed.
Back to Chipotle for a second.
Okay, it really was a good title. Thank you, Ben. Yeah.
No, it just got me thinking because I learned that Americans don't use the word queue. That's not an American. They use the word line. But Chipotle makes me think it's an American, right? Do they have? Ben is from the UK.
Well, he lives in Japan.
Do they have Chipotle in Japan?
I don't know. Probably they have it here, don't they? Do they have it here?
I don't think they have it here.
Do they have it here?
I've never had Chipotle.
No.
It's an American thing.
What the fuck am I talking about?
So that's why I'm like, is it a bit of a, not an anachronism? What is it when you get like...
Two cultures.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cultural issue there.
You can be an English person in a queue at Chipotle, though.
You can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway... I also enjoyed Glitter is Bad for the Birds by Michaela Bishop. Just something about that. It's like, okay, tell me more. Why and why is this relevant? I love it.
I think glitter is bad for everyone.
Well, yeah, I mean, they do call it the herpes of art supplies. Dimitri Martin calls it the
Oh,
herpes
right, I see.
equus. I also enjoyed Love at Frost Sight, and that was by Ella McAuliffe. So it sounds like Ella is leaning into that romance angle after her success in the previous round. I also enjoyed The Telltale Heart by Sheridan Bell.
Yeah.
Shout out to my old mate Poe there.
And love a title that is a twist on a cliche as well, or a known phrase, I guess. Yeah.
And also, like, we're talking about showing and telling, right? So the tale part of that, and I just really enjoyed that. I also really liked Warning, This Book Reads You by Ethan Krause. And that one just is already spooky before you even start reading, so that's really cool. And then finally, I had Lights, Camera, Silence by Marissa Hanley. Obviously, it's usually lights, camera, action, right? And we're talking about showing and telling and action versus bare description kind of thing. So a little bit of a play on that, which I thought was quite clever. And again, another kind of twist on a known phrase. So yeah, all of those really great titles and plenty of others too that we didn't call out. You know, we've talked about it before, but I really do enjoy it when people take that extra step to think about their title. And it's hard because I know sometimes people are pushing up against the deadline. And of course, you want to prioritize like the end of your story, for example, over your title. And I think that makes sense and you should do that. But when you do have the time and the energy, it does pay, I think, to just put that even just 10 more minutes into the title.
Yeah, look, we've called it out and it's never going to make or break your story, or rarely. But yeah, I would say like really try to avoid cliche titles, just a cliche phrase, because we get them over and over again, or the X, you know.
It can work.
It can work, but if you take a little bit of time to just like something out there, and a lot of titles that we've called out, or that I called out, like longer titles, you don't necessarily need to do a long title or anything like that. That doesn't always work. That can sometimes be a bit much. But just something different, just something that we haven't seen before.
We do have an article on our website about leveling up your titles. So check that out because it has some practical ideas for how to do that, because it's one thing to say, give us a better title. Yeah. What does that mean? Well, the article goes into it. So do check that out on the website as well. But thank you to all those authors for just taking that little bit extra care to give us something a little bit more. Cherry on top, if you will. But now let's move into our favourite lines. So, you know, which lines spoke to us? And you've got some, Ed. What would you like to share?
The first one comes from Moonshine Speaks Easy by Janelle Grennan. You might assume from the title it's about a speakeasy. She's teetering on the edge of divulging just how bright Dolly truly shines. Yet the only thing that Dolly fears more than being on the lam long enough to forget how to speak anything but easy is a handcuff on her finger. A handcuff which would lock her forever to a man. Now there's more there, but I just love that image of the ring being like a little handcuff on your finger. I think that's a very powerful image. I haven't seen that.
No, I found that before. Yeah, quite powerful as well. I mean, I like my handcuff, to be honest. But yeah, it fit perfectly with that character's voice as well.
All I heard was you like handcuffs.
No, I just like a good finger ring. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
On that note.
From Things I Don't Tell You in the Queue at Chipotle by Ben Daggers. That moment where I love you becomes nothing more than a vocal tick reeled off out of habit. The Lord's Prayer from the lips of a non-believer. Another great line, just...
Are you okay?
No, I think that's a great way of putting it, like repeating something that you don't truly believe.
No, definitely very evocative.
From #FearIsDead by last round's winner, Elder Orozco, in which ghosts mourn the loss of fear due to social media. And there's a line there, remember when a howl in the wind meant trouble? Now it's just data for a weather app. A world-ending headline earns a scroll. A monster in the darkness gets, at best, a shaky video for likes. Let's face it, fear is obsolete. And I really love that idea of just like...
We're so numb.
We're so numb and we're so overwhelmed by like scary and troubling and dark stuff that like, oh, the wind in the trees, like, what are you talking about?
Take me with you.
Yeah. So from Between Friends by Autumn Bettinger, another former winner. Peter had always been shy, but Katie was boisterous, funny and took up space. I just like that description of taking up space as being very revealing about a character in very few words.
And that's like quite a telling description of those characters as well.
Yeah. And look, our third winner in a row, Chad Frame. So another former winner.
Favourites here.
And we write these lines down blind,
Yeah.
as we're judging. So we don't know who's written them, but it's nice seeing these names come back and realising that, it's...
Nice for them, nice for us, not so nice for everyone else. And save some room for us.
Proves it wasn't a fluke and that we were very right to pick them. So that comes from the story Downward Facing Doug. And the line is, the class moved into Downward Facing Dog. Fitting, because everything in Doug's body was barking. And there's quite a few good lines in that
There were a
story
few.
as well.
Yeah, I might have one myself too.
Yeah, well, do you want to read that now?
Yeah, so I had, Claude, I'm not a goddamn pretzel. And then Claude says, you're still plenty salty. Nice one, Chad.
Okay, I'll do a few more and then we can do yours. So from Sally Reiser Simon's story, a woman with a knack for choosing the wrong sort of man. So the line was, sitting here on a fluffy cloud that I can't help notice resembles bunny ears, waiting for my halo fitting. Her words pound in my memory like the MC Hammer song, Can't Touch This, which I find amusing since I can't touch anything anymore. Which great reference to MC Hammer and made famous in Amanda's story about...
If he wasn't already. And he wasn't, because there was that one judge who didn't know who he was.
That's right. That's right. But also that way to explain that character is an angel, the fact that they can't touch anything anymore. I thought that was great.
Very funny, although there was some touching towards the end of that story. But thank you, Sally. That was a really funny read. I really enjoyed that one.
I'm going to call out the story titled Dead Beef by Michael Stone. And this one is a little bit strange out of context, but the line is, Nadia shoved the fucking thing to the floor. And I just love the close third person used in that line, not... Nadia thought it was a fucking thing. It was so direct and so immediate and kind of a flip of that character's emotion. I felt that was very powerful and good use of that close third.
Definitely no filtering in that sentence.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. From Lucy Mack's story, My Brother, the opening section which set the tone of the story, I thought it was quite poetic. On a deserted Normandy beach, a stray dog pauses mid-lick of an ice cream wrapper. Beneath its paw, the sticky plastic flits like a caught fish. But she isn't letting go of her treasure, not yet. She has stalked it across the wide expanse of sand, followed it along the skeletal driftwood scattered beach where the wounded and the dead once fell. So I thought that was a lovely way of dropping us into that setting and kind of bringing the history into the story.
And not just the setting, but like the vibe of the story as well.
Yeah. And finally, I'd like to call out from N.M. Fadsley, The Irony of a Maladaptive Mind, with the opening line, to know a demon's name is to have power over it. So I've affectionately named mine Alanis Morissette. I thought that was a great story as well. The sort of take on migraines and Alanis Morissette being the migraine demon for this protagonist. So very, very unique story and some great lines in there as well. So what did you have?
So this one's another opening line, and this one I'm calling out for shock value alone. And this was from Buy One, Get One Free from Russ Gurney. And it was, bearing in mind, like we're going from story to story here, I might have just had like a lovely little story about a little flitting squirrel for all we know. And then we've moved on to this, and it is, the ball gag in Henry's mouth was starting to make his jaw sore. His hands and head were in some form of stocks, and his ankles were strapped to the arms of a padded bench. He was naked and aroused.
So it's relatable. That's what makes that one work.
You don't want to relate to this story, I can tell you that much for free. It goes in a very horrifying direction very quickly. But thank you, Russ. We do love a story that makes us sit up and pay attention.
Makes us stand at attention.
Some of us, yeah, go on. Gosh, we've put about $10 in there already just today. All right, and I've already mentioned this one, but this was from Repulsinated by Jennifer Lyons Bell, and the opening line is, his name was Matt.
And you'll be able to hear the whole story when we read that as part of our dinner.
That's right. So thank you, Jenny. That's hilarious. Love it. And then just a little shift in tone, I guess. This was from Disembodied by Tanya Edlington. And I found this one to be quite a powerful description of something that I have close experience of with my husband being paraplegic. This particular character is, I'm not actually sure because it's not stated, but maybe what you might call tetraplegic, like they're sort of trapped. They can't talk or move any part of their body. And they've had like an injury falling off a horse. And this is the line. You learn you're not having a bath. You're rubbed down with a damp cloth like a smeared cafe table. While she works, this person talks to you like you are a child. And now, look, I have to say, like, all the care that Andy has received has actually been really lovely and not an issue here. But I do think it just reflects this powerlessness that comes with being in care and especially if you're sort of physically trapped in your body and can't move. So I found that quite powerful. So thank you for that, Tanya. And I'm going to call out things I don't tell you in the queue at Chipotle from Ben Daggers as well. And this line, so different line, I did have quite a few that were great in that story. And this one is, here's what I don't tell you, that this morning when I woke up and saw you lying next to me, the first sound I made was a sigh, that I stared at your chest in hopes that today it might be still, that I was disappointed you hadn't fallen victim to some rare genetic disorder and died in your sleep, that as your chest rose and fell, my first thought was that you were doing it just to spite me. I'm not sure if we should worry about Ben now or
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Are you okay? No, only a person who is very secure in their own relationship could write something so visceral. And now from Roast Dinner and a Show by Kerry Goldsworthy. And I'll just mention at this point that Kerry was the one who very clearly disqualified herself by making the story so obviously from her that it couldn't have been from anyone else.
And I'll also say you could have chosen any line from that story as well because it was so chock-a-block.
Absolutely chock-a-block with hilarious lines and lovely references for us to get. But I really liked this one, and it was... So without further ado, please welcome the man, the myth, the pointy trophy denier, Rob fucking Thomas, and his newest hit called Kiss That Trophy Goodbye, in brackets plus boot.
And of course, Rob fucking Thomas, all spelt with K's.
All spelt with K's. A little bit of a fun reference back to our knees, Nigel and Nathan with a K. So thank you, Kerry. We did have a good laugh at that one. And then from When I Was 12 by Sky Moore, we had, when the house finally emptied, I slipped back outside to the Ford Falcon. The boot was cold now. I leaned against it, palms flat on the paint, and told the dark about the time Dad taught me to change a tyre using only swear words and a torch.
Great image, isn't it?
Great, very evocative. And then this one was a few lines, but they all work together, so I'm going to read them all. And this was from Bastard Keys by Sam James. It begins, my keys are bastards, every single one. From the bike shed to the back door, bastards. Problem is, they're designed to feel so perfectly at home in tight, dark places. If they stuck to locks, I'd have no issue. Instead, they're down the back of the bastard sofa, underneath the bastard car, in the pocket of the bastard coat I bastard left at bastard work. And look, I know I love a bit of swearing, but it's not just that. It's just such a fun character voice.
Yeah.
And when you open a story like that, I'm ready. You know what I mean? I'm ready to have a good time.
And I've lost my keys before, and that's exactly what I say. Like, exactly what I sound like.
That's it. No one's chill about losing their keys because you're always in a rush when you've lost them as well. And this one I just felt was quite poetic. And this was from Kissing the Boots Goodbye by Penny Nichols. And the line was, seems silly to keep the boots for the occasional return of lonely hands, for the fondling of tender patterns, for blue remembering. And, you know, this was a story about sentimentality attached to boots. And we had a few stories like that. But I don't know, I just found that quite like evocative and poetic.
Yeah, I love a strange sentence you've never read before,
Yes.
like the idea of blue remembering.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? It means what you want it to mean.
Yeah.
And I think we probably share a view of what that means without being maybe even able to articulate it. And then similarly beautiful words from Beeline, Express Toward on the Avenue by Lily Finch. And it was, the sky looked like wet paper, creased, unwilling to hold its shape. You could just really picture that.
Yeah.
And it's another line that I've just never read before.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting way to picture the sky. And I think, look, honestly, that's like a piece of great writing advice, especially in Flash. Wherever you've gone with a cliche description, a description of something that we've all read and seen before, especially if it's like an idiomatic phrase or something like that, delete it and then spend time thinking about that thing in your mind and find another way to describe it. Find your own way to describe it.
And even better if you can find your character's way of describing it as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think if you spend that time, then that's how you end up with these beautiful new metaphors that we haven't encountered before. And they often do have that impact of just being like, oh, wow, like I never thought of it that way. And this was just a fun one. And this was from Canberra with Love by W.M. Peregrine. And it was, an Adele song plays quietly. Mr. Beast wouldn't risk a copyright strike, and it hits me that I might be in real danger. So this was a story about someone who had been kidnapped and who was like playing it off as if it wasn't a big deal. And it's like, oh, hang on, this isn't some Mr. Beast like prank. Actually, I'm in deep shit. So I enjoyed that. From The Ghosts You Bring With You by Chris Doty Dunn. I thought I'd lost my mind, that Dad had clawed out of his grave to follow us. But the only ghosts here are the ones you've brought with you, and they'd follow you anywhere. And that was such a powerful line, which was called out in the title too, and like just cut really deep, I think. Like, oh yeah, shit.
Yeah.
We bring our ghosts with us.
Exactly,
Bit of a ghost story, but the ghosts are like in you.
Yes.
From Azurite Beads Like Whispered Prayers by Elise Scott. Sullen lines etch shadows into a face too young to be so fluent in the language of mistrust. And I really love that. Like making it visual, I guess, making the feeling very visual, which is very much showing, by the way, and not telling, but really beautiful line. And then from For Kevin's Sake by Emily Rinkemer, former second place.
Yes.
I mean, Elise was third, and like we've got some elites here on the list. But I really enjoyed the voice of this entire piece by Emily. But here's just a little extract, and it was, I blew up Earth. I had no choice, really, but Kevin's never going to see it that way. He tells me that I'm impulsive, that I'm hot-headed, that I don't consider the eggs I break to make omelettes. Not sure there's any other way to make fucking omelettes. And this one goes on, but if you open your story with like such powerful character voice, then you've got my attention. And finally, and I did mention this earlier, but this is from Not Quite Smitten by Kenneth Rowland, and it was just the simple words, fuck you. But they were spoken by Margaret Atwood to you, Ed.
That was such a fun story and so surreal.
She wanted us to know that she'd found a really, really pointy trophy that we could use. And we were just
it was like a fever dream.
Yeah, but we were being real jerks about it. And I'm like, oh, look, I don't know, Kenneth. You have the wrong end of the stick there. We're lovely. I don't know where you got that from, but I'd be lovely.
If Atwood phoned, we'd be a lot nicer than that, I would hope.
I'd give her the time of day if she rang. Anyway, so lots of fun stories, lots of evocative, powerful imagery there as well, and a lovely mix of stuff. So thank you, everyone, for putting your best foot forward.
All right. I guess we're getting into the specifics, right, of the prompts, but we start with our more general judging feedback from this round. Was there anything that stood out to you as a general?
I mean, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I felt the quality overall of the stories was really stepped up this round. Like we had a similar number of entries that we've had the past few rounds, but I found it a lot harder to pick the long list, and we'll get into it later, but we found it very difficult to pick the short list this round. It was probably the toughest yet.
The long list and the short list, I think we spent most of the day basically going back and forth and trying to work it out. And particularly the long list, there was a number that we just, we had to cut it to 40, and there was a few that just were on the cusp. And the ones that were on the cusp were very good.
Yeah.
It was not an easy choice which ones would stay in and which ones wouldn't. And I mean, it's never an easy choice, but it just wasn't clear.
Yeah, and it's not an objective choice either, and you're not comparing apples and apples. You're like, well, which thing do I value more highly? Because stories are doing some things really well and other things, it might be a little bit lacking potentially. And it's like, well, which thing is more important? And there's just no real answer to that. So you've just got to kind of work it through until you feel you've justified one over the other. And I just want to say, because we will get to the long list and the names at the end of this episode, but no bullshit. Like, if you didn't make the long list, that does not mean your story's shit. We read so many great stories, so many that we would have loved to have long listed, so many that might have long listed in a previous round.
Yeah.
Which didn't this round because everyone was like bringing their A game this round, it felt like. So, like, I think for me, I had a bit of a slow start. Like, when I first started judging, I'm thinking, oh, I'm a bit worried. The show don't tell thing, as I posted about it on Twitter and Blue Sky, like, I think it's broken these stories. The anti-prompter's broken these stories. And it did to some extent. But as I read on, just more and more and more great stories came through. So thank you, everybody, for doing your best work, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we talked about the long list level, that was harder to make the cut. And also at the short list level, it was really hard to settle on 6. Like, we had about 10 and we were like, how do we cut 4 great stories out of the short list?
Which could be there. Like, they could be there.
We could have shuffled them slightly differently.
Yeah, and there's one story in the shortlist that you fought pretty hard for, and there's one story in the shortlist that I fought pretty hard for. Yep. And had it not been for one or other, like, it would have missed out. And so if you don't make the long list, you probably still did a bloody great job. And if you liked your story, and if you think, damn, I really felt like I had a chance this round, you probably did. Yeah. It just sucked that everyone else did a good job as well.
All right, so let's get into the prompts then. And we'll start with the word prompt, which this round was the word boot. And in particular, this round, there was a lot of stories about like magical or otherwise significant boots, emotionally significant
yeah.
boots.
Yeah, like you say, there was some of these vibey stories about like just meaningful boots. And, you know, lots of great stories there, but I will just issue a word of caution because I think some of them like were really leaning into that like emotional connection to the boot. And the difficulty with that in a piece of flash fiction is like it's almost like we're coming in at the end of the story because often it's coming with that kiss goodbye as well. So we're coming in at the end of the relationship with the pair of shoes. When I say relationship, I mean like just emotional connection to the shoes. And so we don't have as readers that backstory and that history about them, and we weren't really given the backstory and the history much beyond just a brief explanation of how they came to be in the possession of this person. And so as a result, this deep connection to the shoes is really difficult for the reader to empathise with because they haven't sort of gone on that journey. And so I think that did work against some of these stories a little bit where it's almost like manufacturing or engineering a connection to something. And if we talk about emotional resonance, like it's just not resonating with the reader because they don't have all the information they need to form either their own connection in that way or to like relate to a connection they have themselves in their own life or to empathize with that character's connection. It feels like maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say purple prose, but purple in the sense of just melodramatic or whatever without the guts of it.
Yeah, I would say it's almost part of show don't tell. Because we're being told that the boots have significance in a lot of situations rather than like we see the significance that they have or the event that gave them significance in a lot of cases was like just recounted or referenced.
And I think that's how the prompts interact with each other sometimes as well. That can be really interesting. It was the kiss goodbye and the boot going together.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm saying like I think we're just getting the tail end of that story. And you can't give us any more than that. So I'm not really saying like, how would you give much more? You can't tell us this person's life story. And that's what makes that a difficult story to tell. And I don't want to be super negative about it because there was some beautiful, I think you called out some beautiful lines, you know, and there were many beautiful lines and there was heartfelt emotion poured into these stories, I felt. So it was just that matter of like, how can we sort of connect the dots for the reader to get them to feel that impact without kind of expecting them to come in right at the end and like take it at face value.
Okay, with that being said, there's a few stories that I just wanted to shout out that had notable responses to the word prompt. The first one was Soul Survivor by Rebecca Hodges. And that one's notable because it had a boot POV. It's a story told from the POV of a boot. So leaning very heavily into the word prompt. Listen by Melinda Chopik, which was about rain boots. And they were mentioned 9 times and very central to the plot. So another story that leaned heavily into the word prompt.
I do love to see that because sometimes people get caught up in the anti-prompt and sort of, you know, the others become a bit of an afterthought. So it's nice when one becomes a central feature.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, The Crow Boot by Jacqueline Williams, which mentions obviously a crow boot, which is a boot which I wasn't familiar with.
No.
It's a boot worn to heal a leg. So I felt that was a unique detail and one that referenced the prompt and fit quite well into what was quite a vibey little story.
It's an acronym, right? CROW.
Oh, is it?
Charcot Restraint Orthotic Walker.
There you go.
A rigid boot designed to accommodate and support a foot and ankle.
You learn something new every day.
And then Lynn Okaro gave us something a little bit different with the boot of an endoscope. And I'll just read the little definition for us. An endoscope boot is a protective covering for an endoscope designed to either protect the delicate tip during transport and storage or to reduce stress on the insertion tube during procedures. And there are a couple of different procedures that you might use an endoscope for. But you may be very unsurprised to learn, Lynn, that you were the only person to use boot in that context. So thank you for giving us something different there. And then moving on to Philippa Freegard, and I'm just going to read the line from the story. Something flipped. For the first time, she realised that since his diagnosis, the power balance had shifted irreversibly in her favour. Now the boot was on the other foot, a heavy boot made for kicking back. And I just really liked that line because it made it really central. You know, sometimes we can just kind of take a word prompt or whatever and just kind of, oh yeah, it's in there, I'll shove it in there somewhere and it means nothing. And other times we can really draw focus to it. And I do appreciate that when we draw focus to it and give it a role in the plot. So I enjoyed that one. Thank you, Philippa. And then my final shout out goes to Chloe Page, who actually specifically referenced the big gumboot or the golden gumboot in Tully in Australia. So anyone who's listened to our previous episode about my novel Work in Progress would know that I'm a fan of big things. So the big whimsical sculptures, of which there are many in Australia. I know they do exist elsewhere in the world as well, but it's kind of a thing here. And one of those is the golden gumboot in Tully. And just a little fun fact about the golden gumboot, the height of the gumboot, which is 7.9 metres or 311 inches for our North American friends, it represents the amount of rainfall they had in the year 1950, which at the time was an Australian record. Wow. So 7.9 metres of rain across the year.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and like when you look at the boot, you're like, oh shit. So anyway, and Tully know themselves as a pretty wet place, which is good fun. And but that record was broken in the year 2000 by another Queensland town, unsurprisingly. So I love a sunburnt country.
And I love a pretty wet place.
That was such a good punchline. It's like he scripted that shit. Anyways.
So let's move on to the action prompt, which was, again, for this round, the action of kissing goodbye. So it could be kissing something goodbye, someone goodbye, kissing your ass goodbye. This is a common theme. I think because of this prompt and also the boot prompt perhaps as well, we got a lot of like deaths. A lot of goodbyes, a lot of hospital scenes, a lot of breakups as well.
Definitely a lot of breakups. And sometimes even the post-breakup where we're saying goodbye to an object that reminds us, or not necessarily a breakup, but perhaps one of the partners has died as well. And we're saying goodbye to some artifact from that relationship later down the track as well. So we saw a bit of that too.
And so just another word of caution on this one. The phrasing of kissing goodbye was also very visible to us, and we can understand why you'd use that to make sure that you're ticking the box of the prompt.
I didn't have such a huge issue with that. Like it didn't take me out of the story necessarily. Like I think because the action tended to fit in, it wasn't kind of tacked on. It was a substantial part of the story. So that's not something I noticed as a big problem this round.
I noticed it on a couple of stories that I guess worked it into the dialogue in a way that didn't entirely feel natural.
Okay.
So just a character telling another character to kiss their ass goodbye or I'm kissing you goodbye or explicitly stating that. So it's just a word of caution.
Yeah, I mean, you always got to work to make your dialogue sound natural. So I think we raised this in the boot section as well when we're talking about the word prompt, that sometimes because we're focusing on the end of something, like you've got to make sure your story still has the beginning and the middle as well, and that it's not just the end. And so when I talk about beginning and middle, the beginning is the setup. And if we're sort of launching into the breakup scene or the saying goodbye scene without the setup, it feels like something's missing from a storytelling perspective. Like we as the readers don't have the full context yet, and so that a goodbye doesn't necessarily feel as satisfying or conclusive as it might if you had the setup fully established.
Well, we're not invested in the characters as much as, and that's the case as well if it's a scene where someone's dying or someone's saying goodbye to a relative. We can put ourselves in that situation, put our own relatives or our own partner, or if it's a breakup, we can kind of reflect on our own past breakups or whatever the case may be. But you don't really have that character connection unless you build it.
And I think initially when I first started reading through the stories, I was starting to think like, like this show don't tell thing has broken some of the stories. Like I was a bit concerned. And later I was reflecting, I'm like, I actually think it's not the show don't tell issue. It's not the telling that's breaking the stories. I think it's the action prompt.
Yeah.
And so it came back to that issue of missing the beginning of the story and the middle of the story. And when I say middle too, there was no conflict. There were a lot of stories where, well, we're just saying goodbye and then the goodbye happens and we're a bit sad about it. But as a story, there was no conflict in the lead up to that goodbye. It happened. It sort of was like a foregone conclusion before the story even began. And so, when a story lacks conflict, I mean, not always, but often it can feel a little too easy, even when the outcome is a sad one. There's not that push and pull. And so I wanted to talk about a concept that I think is helpful sometimes in storytelling, and that's this idea of dominoes, right? So think of a line of dominoes, each one knocks into the other, right? To knock down the full line of dominoes. So one knocks onto the other and so on. So if we think about a story as a line of dominoes, each action in the story should knock on to the next one. It has a knock-on effect. An action doesn't just exist in isolation and mean nothing for the rest of the plot. That action has to cause a reaction, which then prompts a new action, which causes a reaction. And in a piece of flash fiction, you might only have like one central conflict because there's not a lot of time, or you can have more, but you need to think of your story as this line of dominoes, and we can't just have the end. It's one domino, basically. It just happened and nothing caused it to happen. Another way of looking at it is cause and effect, right? You have something happen and then it causes something to happen, basically, an effect. And so something to think about and reflect on with all of your stories, to go back and think, well, was there cause and effect? Was there a beginning, a middle and an end? Or was this kind of a foregone conclusion that we're just sort of mulling over as we go through and reflecting on? And so it's back to that issue that we've talked about before of vignettes, right? It's not so much a story as just a description of like a static moment. So in a story, you want movement, you want things to happen, whether that be physical movement or just, you know, a progression of the plot. And if it's not, if there is none, then that's what we call the vignette. That's just a static moment. And yeah, sure, it might be imbued with a lot of emotion, but it's not a story.
Yeah.
And it can be powerful, but I think very rarely would a story like that or a vignette like that get you a win.
Yeah.
Because it just lacks that dynamism that kind of propels you as a reader towards the end, and then that satisfaction of that ending. If we're just kind of musing on an idea instead.
In my view, like unless there's a change or there's a realization or there's some crucial moment, the story is almost not worth telling. Like you wouldn't tell, you know, a friend about something that happened to you in a cafe if it was just a beautiful kind of scene necessarily. You might say, oh, it was nice in there, but you wouldn't
go on
recount
about
it.
Yeah.
Right? And just going back to your point about the dominoes falling, I mean, I think there's two things that reinforces. One is realism. Like this is a real story that things happen that cause other things, and that kind of creates the world that mirrors our world rather than just a sequence of actions that are disconnected. But probably more important is the idea of agency and having a character who, you know, has an impact in their world. Otherwise, if a character is very passive and things just happen to them, like you say, if it's a foregone conclusion, then why is the story about them? You know, it's not really their story. It's just things happening to them.
Yeah, and look, things can happen to your character. The domino can be tipped by something else, right? But then it's the character's reaction to that that progresses the plot beyond. And yeah, these are all, like, it's complicated, I guess. We've talked about like 5 or 6 different quite deep concepts in writing there that you could go on and on about. But I guess, yeah, it all just comes back to trying to shape what you're writing as a story rather than something else. And I think there were a lot of something else's. And look, they can be very beautifully phrased. They can include these beautiful evocative metaphors that we've never read before. They can make us think something new about life that maybe we hadn't thought before, and even still not feel satisfying.
Yeah.
So it's just a word of caution and just something to look out for. And I think like this idea of dominoes and cause and effect is something that would help a lot of people, like, because you might think, oh, I just wrote something from the heart.
Yeah.
And why didn't it resonate? And that may be why. It may be that simple. And it may be a case of still taking that beautiful prose but structuring it more with that beginning, middle and end, making sure there's conflict, making sure that your character is driving that conflict or a crucial part in their own journey. All of these things that are what make a story a story.
Yeah.
So that was, I guess, something that I noticed, and I think it was similar to, you remember our opening a door prompt?
Yes.
I feel like the opening a door and the kissing goodbye were opposite ends of that. So the opening door was kind of focused on the opening of the story, the setup, and left us hanging, thinking, well, then what happened? We had a lot of these stories that sort of cut off right as we've opened the door and then the story's over, and we felt like, where's the climax, right? That was something that we said during that round quite a bit. And now we're coming at the end and we're missing the start. So it's kind of fascinating, really, how these prompts can influence writing styles. And, yeah, something worth thinking about for future rounds. Like, make sure you've got all those crucial elements. But But yeah, look, I don't want to come across as too negative here. Like there were obviously a lot of really great stories as well. And amongst the ones that I'm sort of maligning here with what I'm saying, like still some really, really beautiful prose. And that's not to say these stories didn't necessarily make the long list either. Some of them did. But what I feel like I did really enjoy from this prompt was how much emotion came through this round, because it is a shared experience, this saying goodbye, whether it's a breakup, saying goodbye to a loved one who has died. Like these are very relatable human experiences. And so I did find there was a lot more quite intense and powerful emotion in these stories. And that's a big tick every single time from me. So if you did imbue your story with emotion, whether that was sadness, anger maybe, whether you went the comedy angle, but if you went hard and really put everything into it, I think that's always a good thing. And I just wanted to call out a couple of the fun takes. Just had a couple here. So one of those was from Philippa Statkis, who had a program, a goodbye_kiss.exe, which was like a piece of code, like to shut down this AI basically and say goodbye. And there were quite a few stories this round, and we talked about with Dean the reboot thing and how it inspired some of these like human and AI relationship stories, which I thought was really interesting. And in this one, it was basically we've got to shut this AI down, but with a kiss, right? Like I just thought that was really clever and really fun use. So thank you, Philippa, for that. And then this one, and I'm just going to read the lines because I think it was really beautiful. And, you know, you talked about maybe not being quite so on the nose with like, kiss me goodbye or whatever, and actually saying the phrase. This one, it's there, but it's phrased in a slightly different way that I found was quite evocative. So I'll just read the lines. And this was from Stephen Huff. And the story was The Way Out. And the lines are, we didn't even have a shed, so it started with us fighting over ride-alongs on endless Bunnings trips. Then the great novelty of construction, Dad mopping his bald spot with his T-shirt, rehydrating with Emu Export, swatting stray offspring. Ending for us when the Colorbond walls went up and Dad dragged in the remaining materials, his swag, their bedroom TV, and with a peck Mum didn't register as goodbye, disappeared.
Yeah, so it's perfect. I mean, you get the goodbye kiss, but it's not called out. It's not so visible. It's very...
No, it's a peck.
Yeah.
And she didn't register it as goodbye. Like it's
and it
evident.
adds meaning.
Yeah, it did. And I liked that she didn't know it was a goodbye. And in fact, there were a few stories this round that sort of had that goodbye kiss that maybe people didn't realise at the time was a goodbye kiss. And I just thought that was a particularly lovely way of putting it. So thank you to Philippa and Stephen for those. But thanks to all of you who sort of put the action prompt at the forefront of your story. It is fun to see that.
Yes, great examples. But with that, let's kiss the action prompts goodbye and move on to the anti-prompt. The final anti-prompt, the last ever.
Emotional.
Yeah, it is.
It's weird.
It's sad.
Yeah, it is sad because we're not going to talk about it anymore. And look, we decided to go out with a bang. We went with Show Don't Tell, which we've been withholding for some time now.
Is the most common writing advice.
The ultimate. And look, I don't know if you agree, but for a good reason. Showing is way better than telling most of the time in fiction. So a good piece of advice to stick to, I think.
A good piece of advice, and also a difficult one, I think, for especially new writers to really grasp, like, what does it mean?
Yeah, because it's not clear. And we've got those 2 whole articles about it, right? Like the one about Show Don't Tell, which was brief. That is a very brief look at Show Don't Tell. There was no way we could go into everything, and certainly no way people could go into everything just on that weekend of the competition. And then the one about breaking it. But there's so much more to it. And I think sometimes, like, I use it for things that aren't even Show Don't Tell sometimes, where I'm just trying to say, like, elaborate maybe. But yeah, it's a nuanced kind of thing, because it's not like there's a clear-cut definition where something is definitely telling and something is definitely showing all the time. There is overlap as well.
Yeah, but having said that, I mean, look, I think our entrants really embraced it and hit us with many and varied responses to this anti-prompt.
A lot of fun takes. Do you know what I did notice, though? It felt like fewer that went hard on the faithful interpretation.
Yeah.
We certainly had faithful interpretations, and we had a handful, I would say, that went hard.
So faithful being ones that actually broke the rule.
Yeah, trying to actually break the rule and really tell a lot and show little. Yeah. And probably not all and nothing, but, you know, verging on it and trying their best. And there were certainly some that did go hard and impressively. But I felt like most people took a light touch to that faithful interpretation. Look, for good reason. And in fact, some of the best stories were very showing stories, which is difficult because we are challenging you to break that rule.
Yeah, well, that's the thing because, I mean, as we always say, the rule is there for a reason and it's very difficult to break it all the time and still write a good story. And so the best stories, I think, are the ones that centered story and wrote a great story and found a way to just work this in one way or another.
Which is great because we've made it pretty clear now, I hope, that what we're looking for is great stories.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that everybody was on board with that this round.
But so there were a few patterns that I saw, and I'm not sure if you agree with these. A few common responses. One of them was hermit crab fiction, which we've mentioned before, is when you take a pre-existing format that could be like a shopping list or a receipt or whatever the case may be, and you build your story around that. You slip your story into that shell, as it were. So a few
You didn't do the hand
I didn't do
gesture
it.
this time.
I intentionally avoided it. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable.
HR has had a
But I'll
word to
do
you.
it now if you
Thank you.
Yeah, so hermit crab stories, we had a lot of epistolary stories, so like letters and emails and that kind of thing. Not so many diary entries, I think, but a lot of letters, that's for sure. Several conversations. So, telling, what's more telling than a conversation? So lots of just discussions between two people or two or more people.
Well, you say that, but ironically, dialogue is one way of showing.
That's true. But, that's where we've got a bit of leeway, right?
Yeah, literally to tell is to say it.
And another common approach was like recounted stories. So a clear narrator who is part of the scene and who is a character who's like telling a story that happened to them.
And as a subgenre of that, I guess we've got that sort of fairy tale approach as well, where it's very much told as a oral history kind of thing. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I felt like there was a higher than usual number of twists this round.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
I don't know if that comes back to this idea of not showing. Yeah. So that was interesting to see. I do love to see how the prompts create trends. And that was when I noticed this round.
And so one thing we always ask ourselves is hypothetically, how would we have responded to this anti-prompt if we had entered the competition?
Last ever one, what would we have done?
Which is always a challenge. I find the anti-prompt very challenging.
Me too.
And, you never know what you would have come up with on the day.
No.
What jumps to mind immediately, this idea of not showing, is someone not showing up, like not showing up for a date or something along those lines, and then having, the kissing goodbye also leads into that. So not sure if I could have written an effective story based on that. Maybe
to be fair, it's hard to kiss someone goodbye when they don't show up.
That's true. You can still do it metaphorically. But that's where the brainstorming comes in to work out the details. But I think that's what initially grabbed me. What about you?
Yeah, well, I guess I was playing with these ideas of showing and telling and, even doing my little clues on social media. And I started thinking about a mime, because a mime doesn't talk and all they do is show. Right, but taking that and playing with it and maybe giving them an opportunity to talk for once instead of putting on a show. And then I was thinking as well about like ventriloquist dummies, just playing with this idea of the voice and who's speaking and what they're saying. But I didn't formulate a full idea from that. It was just like just a thought, a little spark. But honestly, I think probably I would have played with those ideas and gotten frustrated and thought they didn't work.
And then gone with something far simpler.
Yeah, far simpler. So I think the thing I probably would have actually written a story about would have been naming an emotion.
Yeah.
And I think I would have gone down that track.
Yeah.
And the emotion probably would have been like being at breaking point, right? If I'm on brand with myself and writing my typical story. So I think I would have gone down that track, but it's impossible to know. I think some of our entrants did it far better justice than I ever would.
Absolutely. So. I'm constantly amazed at how creative our entrants are, much more creative than we are.
But let's talk about some of those creative takes.
So let's call out some of our notable responses. So I'll start with a few. Anthea Jones with her story Action, which is 100% unattributed dialogue, much like JR, one of our early recs.
Going for your heart there, I think.
Remember JR? I think it was on the 100th episode celebration podcast I mentioned that JR was written by William Gaddis, perhaps in response to something like an anti-prompt. So I guess now we know which specific anti-prompt it was. He was telling, not showing. So the next one that leaned very heavily into the anti-prompt from a faithful perspective, and that was Riley Nowak's Safe Home Smart Security Log 2025-1024.text. And that's a hermit crab piece that was written entirely as the log of a smart home security system, line by line, but telling a story at the same time, which is really clever.
And on brand for this round, a breakup story.
Yes, exactly. Another theme that we've seen in the past as a response to one of the prompts is having a character named after that prompt. And in this case, by Reynard Shinaki, Shiny Black Wings, where we have a character with the name Show. From Eleanor Menzel's an excerpt from Julian Pelican's annotated rehearsal copy of Robopocalypse, Then, by W. Dufresne, which is written in script form, so basically telling, once again.
Yeah, we're not seeing the actual show, right? We're only getting the script.
Odd at Sea by Andrea Cavido, which is someone asking Homer to tell them about the Odyssey, right? So it's actually the Odyssey itself being like a verbal poem, so something that would have been told back in the day rather than shown as a book might be. The Ghosts You Bring With You by Chris Doty Dunn, which is a letter and much of the story being told in the subtext of that letter. We had some people using this idea of showing and telling within the dialogue of the story itself, and one of those was Reignition by Jaden Christopher, in which the characters have a discussion, like that's part of the dialogue, that's part of the plot, and one character tells another, don't tell me, show me. So working that into the plot. Halfway There by Olivia Holmquist. This story was told from the POV of a fetus and not being able to see what's going on in their lives, kind of hearing and interpreting and coming up with these characters who are called Honey and Sweetheart, who are the parents. And then there's some conflict there.
Memorable story. I did like that, Sweetheart and Honey.
Yeah. So what about you, Amanda? What were some of your notable anti-prompt responses?
So Dean already mentioned this one, but I just wanted to mention it again. And this was Upping the Ante by Brandon Wu. And this was about a poker game and not showing the losing poker hand. But it wasn't just that, right? The story's full of subtext, but basically it's a poker game's playing out and it's this guy who always puts his car up. You know, that's his bet. He's going to put his car and all the others want this car. And, you know, he's been playing for some time, but you get hints throughout the story that he's not well. And then he plays his final hand and he goes all in with the car, and then he doesn't show his final hand, but he accepts the loss. And you imagine that he just wants his friends to have his car. And it's a sad story, but I just thought taking that, I guess, like kind of fun idea of show and tell and poker and all this, but really giving it an emotional twist was quite a clever take. And then I had Justin Krebs, who had the 6th place story in the previous round. And this story was When Skies Are Grey. And it was about a character who has autism spectrum disorder and as a result is unable to communicate verbally. And I thought that was an interesting approach as well, like to give that challenge directly to the character and then create the story from there. Another hermit crab was In Loving Memory by James Fitzroy, which was an obituary. And I thought that was interesting too. We had In The Grief by Chloe Page, and that probably speaks for itself a little bit, that title, but the emotion was a proper noun, like it got a name. And that's, I think, the approach I feel like I probably...
A few emotions got names in that story.
They
as
did.
Well, so.
That was the primary one, I guess, and the central one for that story, but there were a few. And
obviously a reference to never name an emotion, and now we're naming several.
Yeah, so pretty direct response, I guess, to the articles as well and the challenges that we issued there for the anti-prompt. Another one that went hard was Natalie Miniker with Proposed Clinical Pathways for the Treatment of Female Emotional Maladjustment. And I've thought that this was a very admirable take on the anti-prompt, like one of the few that really did go hard with it. And it was really playing with this idea of objective facts, right? We've got a doctor and we've got a patient, and we're looking at a time when, you know, women were being treated for being hysterical or whatever and having some horrible things done to them. But the interplay between what the woman is saying, which sounds, at least to me and to probably most people in the modern world and hopefully every doctor, completely reasonable, and then having the doctor like taking notes. And lobotomize her. But it's the notes, right, that he's taking and what he's observing. And I just, you know those scenes in movies and stuff where like the person goes to the psychologist and then the psychologist just immediately starts taking notes. They're like, what the hell are you writing? And I think think in this case she should have run screaming. But yeah, that was like a bit of a historical fiction, that one. And yeah, quite compelling and a brave, bold take. I don't know if you'd call this a hermit crab or not, but this was The Star Player by Susie, and it was a sports announcer as the conduit for the story. And if we think about sports announcing, it's all telling, right? Yeah, and you don't get to see it. So you might be listening to the radio, you just have to imagine. And then finally, I just wanted to call out Chris Schnebelen with Did You Hear? And this was a story that was all about gossip.
Yeah.
Again, right? Just telling. So, yeah, really, really fascinating. Different angles people took, and like probably the most diverse array of angles. There's so many different ways that people took it. And I do wonder if people have been thinking about it for years.
Yeah.
Thinking that we might do Show Don't Tell next, and maybe they've had some ideas over that time. I was just really impressed by the many different ways people approached it.
No, completely agree. And Show Don't Tell being such a general statement that applies to all aspects of writing, I think that also allows for people to take quite a diverse range of responses to it. There's a lot of options there.
Yeah, and like I just want to say again, and we said it earlier, but like thank you all for bringing your A game.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoyed this round. And I know I mentioned before, like everybody's low energy. We're all comped out at the moment and our buckets are emptying rapidly as we approach the end of the year. But I really felt like everyone just gave it a solid crack. Like let's give the anti-prompt a proper send-off.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we did.
Yeah, I agree. It was a really good send-off, and I'll miss the anti-prompt. And I'm sure a lot of our entrants will both miss it and feel glad to have participated, but also glad to put it in the rearview mirror. But once again, as we move into the final section of this episode where we read the long list, just want to mention again what a difficult decision this was, especially this time around. There were several stories that were cut from the long list just because we had more than 40 that deserved to be in there.
Yeah, I mean, we had a long list, didn't we? It was long.
Yeah,
there were a lot of stories that could have made it on there. So if you don't hear your name, please do not be discouraged. Please see it as a challenge. Please spite write an amazing story in the next round.
Absolutely. All right. Well, without further ado, the moment you've all been waiting for, the long list for the October 2025 Not Quite Right Prize for Flash Fiction. Upping the Ante by Brandon Wu. Dead Beef by Michael Stone. St. Karma's Fate, Come for the Paddy Pan Toffees, Stay for the Reckoning by Romany Jane. My Brother by Lucy Mack.
An Archaic and Brutal Word by Torinell. In the English Way by R.C. Barajas. The Way Out by Stephen Huff. Every Morning We Kiss Goodnight by T.J. Burgoyne.
The Grief by Chloe Page. Men Called Russell by W.J. Arthur. Things I Don't Tell You in the Queue at Chipotle by Ben Daggers. Downward Facing Doug by Chad Frame.
The Fairy Godmother's Monologue, to be performed alone on stage directly addressing the audience by Cara Robson. Mummy, Kiss Me Goodbye by Leda Canary. Demon's Land by John Schultz. The Irony of a Maladaptive Mind by N.M. Fadsley.
Her Greatest Asset by Renanda the Ink Rat. When I Was 12 by Sky Moore. Moonshine Speaks Easy by Janelle Grennan. A Blush Moon Rising Over the Mountains of Ida by Lorena Oates.
Bastard Keys by Sam James. Nobby and the John by Hideo Kuwahili. How Do You Feel Today by Melissa Jornd. Reignition by Jaden Christopher.
Tell Me What the World Looks Like by Josh Lowe. Nico's Light by Roger Vickery. Beeline, Express Toward on the Ave by Lily Finch. Just Say It by Angela Hayes.
The Ghosts You Bring With You by Chris Doty Dunn. Step Right Up by Dawn Goulet. Lights, Camera, Silence by Marissa Hanley. Monotony by Deidre Witt Lovegren.
A Confessional by Exeter T. Stevens. Guided Relaxation by by Ellen Arwen Tristram. A Really Big Shoe, as Ed Sullivan would say, by Edgar J. Lavoie. I Need This Like I Need a Head in the Hole, by Sarah Kennedy.
For Kevin's Sake by Emily Rinkemer. Delusions by Philippa Freegard. Trichotillomaniac by Kelly Johnson. And, finally, The Clicker by Heather Pownell.
So congratulations to all of our long listers.
Yes, a huge congratulations. You rose above
I
in
know.
what was probably the most challenging round yet.
And some very familiar names there as well. It's good to see some people back in the long list and good to see some new names as well.
It's about half-half, I think. So half newbies to the list and half people who've made it before. Very proud of you all.
And only we know who is on the short list. And I really cannot wait for the next episode to read those stories out. Some amazing stories this round.
And all of those mentioned just now are contenders for the shortlist. So those 6 prize-winning spots. We've also got the 3 wildcards again this round, which may or may not have been mentioned in that list just now and could be anyone.
In fact, I will say that at least one wildcard is not on the long list. So if you didn't hear your name read out, you may hear it read out on the next episode.
Indeed. And for those shortlisted stories, they will be winning cash, obviously, which who doesn't need a bit more cash in their life? But also they'll be featured in the anthology that will be coming out later this year. And I will be frantically finishing putting that together and frantically contacting those shortlisted authors to get their details for this book. And I'll be very, very excited to publish that. And I hope you'll all buy a copy. In fact, those whose names were mentioned in the long list, regardless of whether you make the shortlist, you'll find your name in the book too.
And that goes for all 4 rounds.
That's right. We want to celebrate everybody who rose above. Just get your name in print. Why not? But also for those of you who made the long list, you've got your little badge, right? So if you go to the honour roll section of our website, you will find a little image with your name and your story title on there, and you can download that and use it on social media if you'd like to. And even if you didn't make the long list, we always have a little bonus badge there for you to use if you'd like to, just for a bit of fun. So head to the honour roll section of the website for those. And if there are any errors, it's a very manual process creating those badges. So if we've mistyped your name or if for whatever reason your pen name isn't how you expected it to be, please let us know and we can update that for you. Now, we're not doing critiques this round, the written critiques, but I will be doing some one-on-one coaching sessions, which I'm very excited about. Now, I'm not sure exactly when this episode's going to be dropping, so some of those sessions may have already begun, but I'm really excited for those. And yeah, I can't wait to speak to those individuals about how their story did and give them a little bit more insight. I'll be in contact with you separately about that.
And if you do want to get some one-on-one advice from Amanda, some one-on-one feedback about your story, sign up for the coaching package in the January round there.
Yeah, I think we have some left, don't we? So yeah, and I'd love to. It's like a half an hour Zoom call basically. And we just go through in detail your story and we can talk about like specifically what resonated with us, what didn't, maybe some ideas, but also more generally around your writing practice, what your personal goals are and trying to help you get closer to your goals.
So that about wraps it up for the long list episode. We've got our shortlist episode coming out in about a week's time, and then we'll have our Daredevil episodes following our shortlist where we'll be able to hear those stories and rip them apart, tear them a new one.
Jenny's been sucking up. Trying to get a bit of leniency. Forget it, mate. Forget it.
Well, she hasn't sucked up to me.
That's your first mistake right there.
And look, at some point we'll have a regular episode come out. We'll be talking about Poe on our next episode.
Will we, or are you going to put me off again?
No, I'd love to, but I've got to read some Poe.
Yeah.
And we've also got to read some flash fiction, so it's going to be about priorities. I really can't wait to record another regular episode, so hopefully we can squeeze one of those out at some point soon. But that's what's coming through the pipeline. Wow.
Went squeezing out pipelines, flash fiction.
All right, I'll pay it. Okay, but apart from that wraps up the long list. And just to, again, we want to thank everyone who entered this round. Give yourself a big pat on the back, even if you didn't make the long list, and remember that you might still make a wild card.
Yeah, and I really love how everybody just embraced this final round of the anti-prompt and to just give it a proper send-off. Like, I know there were people who had other things they could be doing that weekend, and they just went, you know what, I'm not missing it. I'm going to do it. We've come this far together. You know, we have to see it through. And I really thank you for that because, you know, it feels like a team effort. You know what I mean? I didn't write a single word, but it feels like a team effort. And I really appreciate your enthusiasm. It makes it fun for us to do as well. And, you know, I guess sometimes it's disappointing if you don't make the long list, but I hope you had a good time and that you're proud of what you wrote or like deeply ashamed, one or the other, right? There's a few people who should be deeply ashamed of their stories and they know exactly who they are. But thank you so much. And I'm really, really excited to read out the winning stories in the next episode.
But we have one more little treat if you hang around till the post-credits. There'll be a little bit of something extra for you there. But until next time, right on.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to Not Quite Right. If you'd like to reach us via email or follow us on social media, you can find all the links on our website, notquiterightpodcast.com. That's WRITE. And if you enjoyed the show, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcasting app.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
For a little bonus, it's a story that we've mentioned a couple of times in this episode, but it didn't make the long list.
Rightly or wrongly.
A little bit of fan fiction, so we thought we'd read it out. And that is Not Quite Smitten by Kenneth Rowland. The bright red phone rang with a cautious optimism. Ed flushed, zipped up, and strolled out into the vast opulence of the NQW headquarters. Podcasting was easier before we had listeners, he said casually.
Fuck!
Amanda looked up from counting F-bombs.
You made me lose count.
Ed shrugged as he picked up the phone. Angelo, you've got Ed?
Ed, it's Margie Atwood from Canada.
Who?
Margie Atwood, I submit to your competition.
We actually call it a prize. Ed stared at the curled pinky of his right hand. He would need to get that nail trimmed.
Whatever.
Margie said.
I found the perfect trophy for you.
Ed gasped. Amanda, does it look like the left side of my fingernail is longer than the right?
For fuck's sake.
Amanda smashed her hands down on the large oak conference table.
I was at 69. Don't let me forget that.
She got up and approached Ed.
What's wrong with your nail? Hello?
The phone screamed. Sigh, Ed sighed. I'm putting you on speaker. Ed pushed a button and hung up the receiver. It's Barbie Redwood, he said. She's a listener.
Ooh.
Amanda cooed.
Always good to hear from a listener. How are you, Barbie? It's Margie, but that doesn't matter. Listen to me. I found the perfect trophy for your prize.
Ed rolled his eyes at Amanda. Listen, Barbie, we already have...
It's really pointy.
Margie broke in. Amanda threw her hand over Ed's mouth.
How pointy? Really, really pointy.
Ed looked skeptical. Where did you find this really, really pointy trophy?
It was in a booth at the flea market. It's made out of elephant tusk. The mount is giraffe leather, edged with panda fur. You gotta see this thing. And you found it at a boot fair?
Amanda questioned.
What? Did you say a boot? What did I say about what?
Amanda asked.
What? Look, this thing is so pointy it could literally pierce a hole in the fabric of reality.
Show it to me, Ed said.
I'm on the phone.
Tell it to me then. A sigh emerged from the phone and swept through the spacious headquarters. It climbed the metal stairs to the innuendo tank, drifted through the editing studio and into the Coven's retreat space before taking the citizen train back to the phone.
You know what? Forget it. I'm just keeping the trophy and pretending I won it.
Fine. We don't want your pointy trophy anyway, Ed shouted.
Fine. Fine. Kiss my ass goodbye.
Slam, click, buzz. A dull hiss briefly filled the air. Now I kind of want that trophy, Ed sighed.
Me too.
Amanda twitched her lips.
Oh well, back to my fucks.
Oh, that's $1 in the innuendo tank.
Get bent.
The phone rang again. Ed sang into the receiver. NQW, what can I do for you?
I'm still going to enter the competition.
Margie said quietly. Fair enough, Ed smiled. But we call it a prize?
Fuck you.